Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to tonight's episode of the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. I'm your host, Nate, and I'm joined tonight by the illustrious Uncle Mark and Xenophage with an X and a 0. Is there 0 in there still? There's not a 0 in there anymore in there.
There's never been a 0 in it.
I thought there was a 0 at one point.
No. Well, only if whoever keeps stealing my handle steals it for whatever service I'm signing up for.
I thought initially your Twitter handle had a 0 in it, and then you had to like get the other spelling or something.
No, that was my Xbox handle actually.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what I'm remembering.
I also hereby declare this podcast the Dark Souls of IT podcasts.
Man, we're not even through the main topic. You're back to games already.
People can wonder about that declaration, and we'll circle back.
Maybe we'll.
You ruined it, Nate. Good job.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's totally not about video games. It's about Mark's new religion.
Whatever. Although it is a little bit like a religion. Anyway,
kinda.
Anyway, so welcome to the Iron Sysadmin, the Dark Souls of IT podcast.
Okay, maybe I'll edit that later. Probably won't. All right, so
we all know that's not happening.
Welcome back, everybody. We took an episode off, mainly because we didn't have a topic. We could have thrown together some kind of a softball episode, and to be honest, one, I didn't want to do that to you guys, and two, I just wasn't feeling it. And tonight we're back, and I'm feeling like recharged and ready to do a podcast. So I hope you guys agree.
Oh, lucky us.
Yeah, right?
I mean, that's great, Nate.
That's great. So tonight, I don't know where this topic idea came from. It's totally not at all reflecting the world news or anything. But we're going to talk about cyber warfare, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that is. How does it differ from just script kiddies trying to take down people's websites or Bitcoin miners or whatever? And basically, what you might have to worry about, what maybe you can't worry about, what you might be able to do to protect yourself. And this isn't some deep how-to on how to protect all of your machines from nation-state actors, but it's more or less us having a conversation about what might be good practices. So, don't take this as some sales pitch for, whatever, some weird security services or something. It's just us talking like usual. Yeah. You're selling no security, right?
Remember, when it comes to cyber warfare, the more blinky lights it has on it, the more defended you are.
The more blinky lights, the more defended you are. And, there's also the how can I possibly defend myself against a nation-state actor? And maybe we'll try to touch on that a little bit tonight. I don't know how true that really is, but... So, let's go. Right, so what the heck, why are we talking about cyber warfare? And as you might have noticed, there's some stuff going on over by Russia. In fact, Russia may be perpetuating all of it. And the Ukraine. And as we know, as we know, Russians have sort of a reputation for also having a pretty good cyber game when it comes to attacks that are not necessarily boots on the ground, but attacks that are very much of a cyber nature, right? So information security and whatnot should be on high alert if you're the right kind of people that might be targets for Russian cyber warfare, right? So that's mainly why this has come out tonight. I included the Wikipedia article about what cyber warfare is and how it's defined, but even that, there's some debate even within the article about what actually constitutes cyber warfare. What I'm kind of pointing at tonight is more like nation-state sponsored stuff, but there's also, you could say things like hacktivism are kind of like cyber warfare because it's an organization trying to do a thing for a cause. But it's not usually, I would argue, not generally at the same level as nation-state sponsored stuff.
Right? I would put that firmly as hacktivism. When I would define cyber warfare, I'm talking specifically nations attacking nations for the purpose of destruction.
I honestly think I agree with you, but again, the Wikipedia article kind of makes that distinction that some people consider hacktivism, a similar thing.
So here's some. I've got questions rolling around in my head, and
Okay.
I've researched none of this. So they're more like questions to throw up against the wall and see what people think.
Sure thing.
So the U.S. is loosely engaged in this conflict right now. Like, we've obviously not really committed any significant military activity there because, well, we don't want to trigger a nuclear war. That's one good reason, right?
What?
But so there's some delicacy there. But if I were to like fly over to Europe and, you know, charge into battle on behalf of the Ukrainians as a private U.S. citizen, I suspect that that would be behavior that would be frowned upon. I'm assuming that that's true, right? I mean,
I would. I guess what you want to do with your life is up to you.
no, I get that, but
if you're talking about like I'm gonna grab the little 22 target pistol I have in my closet and fly over to Europe and just try to join the front lines, yeah, I guess that's entirely up to you, Mark.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not talking about is it a good idea. I'm talking about would the U.S. government like have a problem with that? Would I be committing some sort of violation that I'd be legally accountable for? Like, as an individual, I'm not allowed to perform military acts on behalf of my country
Right.
as a civilian.
Oh, right.
Right.
So you're imagining like Uncle Mark at the front of the lines with an American flag flying above his head saying, "I'm here to support Ukraine. I'm from America."
So
Kind of pretending like you're
I think, yeah. And I think I saw some gears click inside of Jason's head. I think he knows where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going to.
So, as a civilian, are civilians who would engage in cyber warfare across the internet against a hostile nation? What are some of the legal ramifications and do's and don'ts and
Yep.
things like that?
So I have that in the agenda. If you look way down here that I
okay.
have it highlighted.
Oh, good deal. Because that's
Jeez,
I thought of that.
There's an outline and everything. Like, you got to follow it. Like, you're skipping ahead.
Oh,
Well, I was trying to like build up, what is cyber warfare? Why are we talking about it? But
All right, so we're going to talk about that later.
That's fine. We'll just shortcut the whole thing and go right to the middle.
We don't
How's
have
that
to
sound, Mark?
shortcut. We don't have to shortcut. But that's kind of I've been mulling that in my head since we brought up this topic.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a very valid point, and we are going to talk about it because I know Jason probably has some opinions. I've got some opinions, and I think a lot of it is going to come down to. We're not lawyers, obviously, but I think we have a good idea as to what's legal and what's not, right? From that perspective.
All right, so I'll be quiet a little bit and let you get back to like rolling out the whole general topic.
So I did want to call out most of our listeners are probably familiar with the Darknet Diaries podcast. He's got probably a number of episodes that touch on cyber warfare. I put a link to one that I remembered that I thought pretty good. That's in the notes here, the show notes. But I would recommend, honestly, we had Jack on the show a while back, and he's a great guy. He makes a great show. If you have not checked out the Darknet Diaries podcast, go do so. There's lots of stuff on this topic there, and lots of other really cool cybery and information security style topics. But we won't talk too much about that at this point. Just go check it out. Listen to the episode that I linked. It gives you kind of a really good idea of what nations are actually doing. People that are literally soldiers that are brought into the military specifically for cyber warfare, right? So this isn't just like kids in their basement, America trying to attack the Russians, right? This is like literally people on the payroll of the military conducting cyber, like what's the word I'm looking for?
Warfare?
Well, no. The word, yeah, I guess assaults could be it. Whatever. Cyber soldiers. All right. Jason, you linked something here from the White House statement. You want to talk about that quick? About why it's there? Or is
it's basically, it was sort of, it fits into the why cyber warfare topic.
Okay.
So the White House basically released a statement on the 21st, which is like a couple days ago. Like 3 days ago, on cybersecurity and making sure that you're doing it and locking things down, etc. I don't know. I don't have anything official. Probably couldn't say if I did anyway. But I mean, the basic gist of this is maybe something's going to happen, so you should get your ducks in a row. Go do it quick now. But, we just want to make sure people knew. If this is just a general idea, you should cybersecurity, guys. So it's like, it's kind of a political White Housey way of saying, like, yeah, there's most likely credible threats out there.
Yeah.
And you should lock your stuff down. Now, and I'm sure we're going to get into this, but, does this apply to everybody?
Right.
And the answer to that is, yes, of course it does. Go lock your stuff down. What are you doing? So, do the basics.
Like, I do intend to touch on,
you should be doing already.
Yeah, but I mean, I do intend to touch on, like, analyzing your own threat model. Like, what is it reasonable to think that you may actually be a target, right? And for, like, the average citizen, probably not. For, like, power companies and stuff, probably. Financial institutions, probably, right? That's stuff that could hobble the infrastructure of the United States, and that's,
The Russians are totally coming after our Tamland Valheim server. You know that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're going to use it to, I don't know. They're gonna enlist the trolls.
Well, the answer is not a very clear yes or no. So,
oh, absolutely. I think I know where you're going.
Think about this. Something happened this year. A small little bug in a little thing called Log4j.
Yeah.
And there's this game that was written in Java and happens to use Log4j because it's written in Java.
Yeah.
It's fortunately for us, it's not very popular, except for the probably thousands or hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of servers that are out there, all of which are typically run by people who do it for fun and don't have any particular standing in the security world and don't really think about that. It is trivial to take these things to basically abuse these servers using this. And that is exactly the kind of target that hacking groups and potentially nation states would go after for a variety of reasons. They couldn't care less about your stupid Minecraft server.
Oh yeah, they don't care about Minecraft. They care about having more CPU cycles at their disposal. Yeah.
Yes, your Minecraft server could serve as a server in their DOS against, say, a U.S. government site or a Ukrainian site or a Russian site or whatever. Like you can be used as a tool. So you're not necessarily being targeted, but you're being targeted. Now, the plus side of that, of course, is that when a nation state is looking for stuff like that, it's script kiddie stuff. They've written a script that goes out and says, does this exist? Cool. Try this. If it works, great. If it doesn't, move on.
But the reason for that is they don't have to get more sophisticated.
Right.
But if you put the bare minimum into protecting your Minecraft server or your Valheim server or your WordPress site or whatever, that's one less thing that will be easy to compromise and easy to use against something that could actually be important infrastructure, right? Maybe no one cares about your Minecraft server except you, right? Oh man, my world in Minecraft is down. I can't play. But when that takes down some piece of the U.S. power grid because you were a piece of it. Now, obviously, you're not liable for that. I don't think you are anyway. I hope you're not. But yeah, it's kind of like, do your part, right? Do you leave weapons laying around in your front yard for criminals to pick up and hurt other people with? No, you probably don't. Rocks, maybe. Rocks, fence posts, stuff like that. I mean, like legit weapons that should be protected, right? No, you shouldn't. Rusty shovel for when the zombies come. That's a defensive weapon for the zombie apocalypse. That way when you're taken out by the zombies, the next passerby can use your shovel.
To Jason's point, something that you wouldn't think would be a weapon, well, that they can be weaponized, like a Minecraft server.
Yeah.
I'm only being a little facetious there.
Yeah.
Which is why I take my security for my home lab which is behind, the NAT firewall. I've only got the ports open I need for the Valheim server,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, and I keep it patched. I take all that stuff very seriously because even though it's probably never going to be used as a tool for bad, it's
You
good
don't
practice.
want it to be, right? Yeah.
It's good practice.
Yeah, but I mean, there's lots of stuff out there for them to use that people don't even think about. I think it's Netgear has routers out there that, for certain versions of firmware are, I mean, it's again trivial to take these things over. And there's those are even wider than Minecraft servers. Like those, you're talking hundreds of thousands again,
Oh
or
yeah,
millions.
I mean, think about home routers or like smart
Yeah.
devices. Oh, my dishwasher, I can connect to it over my app on my smartphone and find out when my dishes are done. Right? Sure. Is Samsung or whoever made your dishwasher doing a good job of keeping your dishwasher patched? I don't know.
Right.
Is it susceptible to Log4j?
Stuff that's inside of your network,
right?
Theoretically is less
safer.
susceptible.
Yeah.
But when you have big, like massive providers, I'm talking like some of the biggest providers in the world that are deploying devices that are susceptible to very simple hacks, that's a problem because they literally have millions of customers. So you're talking millions of devices, all with the same software on them.
Yep.
And a script kiddie could just like knock those things down like Legos, like done. I own them all.
Either of you ever watched Silicon Valley?
Yes.
No, I
Remember the storyline with the refrigerators and Guilfoyle's computer ended up putting Pied Piper onto the smart fridges?
Yes.
Because they were attached to the same network.
Yes.
I mean, some of that stuff was crazy, but yeah, cloud
It's not
connected
crazy.
devices. Suddenly, the guys had this contract to store data for this insurance company, and it ended up spread across not on like Amazon Web Service, but across thousands and thousands of smart refrigerators.
Right, and that can easily be like a DDoS. Right, that's probably the most common use for
And
stuff like that.
It was
Yes.
pretty funny.
Yep.
Great series.
Yeah, or Bitcoin miners, but I don't know
Bitcoin
that nation
miners,
states
yeah.
are too interested in that.
Well, the thing, like, there's, maybe that's not a valid argument. I was going to say that things like a refrigerator or my smart light bulb example, they don't have a lot of power to them. But I guess if you can get millions of them, it doesn't matter if they don't have a lot of power to them. If they get a little bit, right?
My refrigerator's pretty capable. It's got a lot of memory in it because it can display pictures. It essentially is an Android tablet built into it.
But like, does it have a GPU? That's what I mean, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, well, you also have to keep in mind that like script kiddies just grab. It's not like they've written their code to go, does this particular device have enough power? They're like,
what I mean is,
can it run? Yeah, run it.
What I mean is the controller in my smart light bulb has such a tiny amount of actual raw processing power that I shouldn't say nobody, it would be less likely for someone to think, I should target the ESP8266 smart light bulbs for my Bitcoin mining operation, right? Yes, if you get 1 billion of them, right? Sure, that might get you something, but
I could
the smart
I could
fridge might
target
be a better
those...
example, or like a compute cluster. That would be a great target.
Yeah, but your light bulb has just enough power to act as a bootloader to drop everywhere else in your network.
Sure, it could be a foothold, but now you're getting to like a more targeted threat. That's not just a sweep and go.
Yes and no. I mean, so yes, your average script kiddie is not going to do that.
Right. That's what I mean.
Your
a nation state actor might.
I mean, you have to put the nation states up high and say that they're pretty much capable of whatever.
Yeah.
But typically there's a target for them. They're not doing it just to do it. But you do have, your criminal groups, your high level criminal groups that are doing this with an intention, right? So yeah, I don't think Nate has any data that I want. I couldn't care less about his data, but he might get me a foothold into Red Hat.
Right.
So
Mark might get me a foothold into Red Hat, or maybe I can get a foothold using him into some client or something. Like, like there's a million reasons why they
Right.
might do that, and
again, that's a
those
targeted
groups,
thing. Those are a lot harder to defend against.
but those groups tend to write tools that are they're script kiddie-ish in that they, there's stages to the way their tools work.
Yeah.
So they'll write something that goes out
and easy, and
right.
Then,
They'll write something that goes, but it's automated. So they may not be targeting you specifically. They may just be blowing it out there and looking for what comes back, which is, honestly, as an automation person, it's kind of a smart way to do it. Like hit everything, see what comes back, what looks good out of that, and then dig deeper from there if you want to, and script all that as well. Targeted attacks. Yes, you're right. I mean, if you're targeted and there's any skill at all behind the person targeting you, you're not stopping them. It's not going to happen. I mean, short of like pulling the plug completely.
Yeah, I turned off my router. I'm safe.
Yes. Well, turning off the devices they're targeting.
Right.
Excuse me, but I mean, if you're being targeted, that's where security is no longer. It's not. It's long since passed where we're playing the block everybody and don't let anybody in the network game.
Yeah.
Today's game is, make sure you hit the low hanging fruit. You don't want script kiddies walking through your network because you forgot to turn off telnet or whatever.
Forgot to log for Jay.
Take the standard precautions, do the standard, patching and everything else. Yes, there are companies that are doing a lot more and spending a ton of money on security because it's paramount to what they do, but that's not your average person.
Right.
But even those guys that are spending that money, if they are targeted, somebody's getting in. And like, period. It is not a game of make sure you can block them and keep them out. It's a game of it's called time-based security. It's okay, somebody got in. How fast can I detect that they're in the network?
Right.
And that's where you get these newer job descriptions like threat hunters. Their job is literally to just crawl through the network looking for anything out of the ordinary and try to find the guy that's in their network.
God, this reminds me of like when I used to play Shadowrun in college.
Yeah, like he's there. He's there somewhere.
Oh no, the ice is on me. Oh no,
Yep.
the enemy deckers are in here trying to
So
burn me out through my neural jack.
Right. It's a game of, can I put enough monitoring, detection, logging, and enough extra steps for stupid things to happen for them to be slowed down enough that I can detect them before they can get to what they're after and pull it out. And it's, it somewhat, I mean, depending on what's going on, like it somewhat evens the playing field a little bit because now, you're kind of both acting as attackers per se, because you're actively looking for someone. So it's not the, defenders have to be right all the time and attackers only have to be right once. That's not entirely true anymore.
I mean, that's the old model, right? When you didn't have
sort of
someone that was actively looking for people, right? Now, like in the old model, it's, I have logs, I have things that detect this, I have automation, I have things, that are supposed to detect threats. But yeah, having somebody actively looking for somebody else kind of changes that game.
Yeah, there's a point of diminishing returns where you can pour all the money you want into security and you're not going to increase anything.
Yeah.
From the basic defense game,
Right.
At that point you're moving towards red teams,
Yep.
threat hunters, all sorts of stuff like that.
Yep. Yep. So
that's all the tactical stuff, right? So
Yeah.
so let's talk at a strategic level, right? Because now you've got the situation with Russia as a player in this. They're the nation state, and the world is reacting in a lot of ways. If you remember World War II with Japan, one of the reasons that they punched us is because they saw us as a threat to a vital resource. They saw us as a threat to their oil supply. Because wars are fundamentally usually about
resources,
fighting over a resource.
Yeah.
So, and ironically, what's happening now is as a reaction to what Russia's doing in Ukraine, there's many companies that are cutting off modern IT resources to Russia.
Yep.
So how are they dealing with that? Is it possible, you guys think, that they'll use, cyber warfare to try and essentially pirate resources, take over compute resources that, normally they'd just be able to clusters, not necessarily because you're just trying to be disruptive, but because Amazon says you can't spin up EC2 instances anymore.
Yeah, I
There was
would.
an article the other day that Russia will be out of hard drive storage space soon.
I would argue that that's kind of the same thing we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
The cyber warfare act, right, of going around, finding vulnerable machines, taking them over, and bending them to your will. That's exactly what you're describing, right? And I guess it's a different motivation if it's I can't purchase services anymore, so now I need to go take over services that do the things that I need to purchase, right? That's sort of a different motivation, but it's the same concept, right? It's I'm going to go,
Right.
take over an Amazon data center so that I can use the services that I would have just bought from Amazon, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if that sounds ridiculous or if people are poo-pooing that concept, but
I don't think it's ridiculous.
again, it's a thought.
I don't think it's ridiculous. No, I mean it really comes down to what resources the enemy already has, right, and what they need. And if they're really cut off, yes, they're going to try to find ways to steal it in the same way that they might try to steal, fuel from a neighboring country. Same concept, right? It's a resource, and that's I think that's kind of part of the fundamental shift in the world we have today versus the world we might have had in like World War II, right? Technology is now a resource. At least I think it's a resource, right? The internet, connectivity to the internet, the ability to use the internet
Cloud
in the way that, what's that?
Cloud services.
Cloud services, right? They're now a resource. Like they're a thing. And yes, and we've had lots of conversations on this show over the years about whether cloud services are the right way to go because you don't have control of them. And it's really the same problem, just at a much different scale, right? If you don't have control of your resources on a cloud provider, and now you're a nation that goes to war and everyone disagrees with you and they take away your access to those resources, right? It's the same thing as if you're running your website on a cloud provider and for some reason you're banned from that cloud provider and now your website's down, right? It's just a much different scale.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've already gone like all over the the nice outline I've provided, but that's fine. That's how this show goes. I did want to touch on, so I have a whole section here about what constitutes cyber warfare. We've talked about hacktivism. We've talked about nation states. We've talked about direct attacks. We've talked a little bit about malware. That's kind of the script kiddie angle. But we have not talked about, and I don't know if this constitutes cyber warfare. I put this in here because I'm kind of curious, and I thought we'd talk about it a bit. The banning of services. So I heard, actually on the news 2 days ago or something, that Russia has declared that Meta, the company, has broken the law because they are, perpetuating disinformation or something like that. So now Meta is not allowed to do business.
Ironic.
Right. Now Meta is not allowed to do business in Russia. So theoretically, and really what that comes down to is that Instagram and Facebook are blocked in Russia. You can't use those in Russia now. Now, realistically, what that does is it cuts your people off from communications in some ways. Right. Now, obviously, that's not the only way they can communicate, but it's a big piece of today's communications. Right. So I kind of wonder, right? Like, do we call that cyber warfare? Or is it really more like
No,
suppression of information?
no, because this has happened in China, and it was never an act of war. It was, China has different laws, and they weren't foreign laws that like I know Google was involved in that one, and Facebook might have been one of them as well. But
Yep.
I
don't know if Facebook was. But
I'm sorry, I refuse to call them Meta because that's dumb.
I know. I'm trying to follow the name of their company, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever. He's an idiot. You can't call him Meta. But they were not allowed to operate inside of China, and that's purely from a that's how it works, right? You don't follow the rules, you don't get to play in the game. Now, is Russia doing it because like, oh, this will strike a blow against the U.S.? Like, sure, maybe, I don't know, but it's not really. Wouldn't really consider that attack, right? So cyber warfare to me really comes into focus when. So you got to think of it this way, right? So if you got two nation states attacking each other in the cyber realm, and they're fighting back and forth, right? So a lot of people think like, okay, that's, it's a bunch of computers fighting each other. Like, who cares? It's when it turns kinetic that it becomes an issue, right? And we've seen that. We've actually, like, there is an example of that now. Not in this conflict, but in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I believe it was Israel. Like, they bombed where the Palestinian hackers were apparently staying. Like, it was some office building or something. Like, the kinetic attack, like, oh, you hacked us, boom. Like,
oh yeah,
now you
I do remember
really
this
brought
now.
it into, like, this is warfare. Like, people are like in
and
danger.
there was also, there's been things like and I don't know, I'm foggy now on the details because it was what, 2012 or whatever, the Stuxnet thing. Like, that was
right. That's another good
taking
example.
over taking control of the controllers in nuclear power plants, wasn't it? Was it water?
It was taking over the the spinning things, whatever the hell they're called.
Centrifuge?
Turbines?
The centrifuges. Yes, they were taking over the centrifuges to cause them to act erratically, to break the centrifuges so that they could not refine nuclear material for nuclear weapons. Right. So that wasn't intended as a, we want to go hurt people, but it was intended to destroy their military capability.
Right.
But
yes,
concept, I mean, that would fall into the cyber warfare realm.
The concept is the same, right? Whether it's centrifuges in nuclear refiners or whether it's controllers in the nation's water system or electric grid. Right.
Or go back to when Russia invaded Georgia. Is that right? I know Georgia was involved somehow. The country, not the
state.
Yes, but the precursor to that invasion was a direct attack on, I believe, their electrical grid and other government facility or government IT facilities, which kind of blacked out a whole lot of communications and a whole lot of everything before troops hit the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's using computers to preempt an attack.
Yeah.
That's happening, quote, in the real world.
Yep.
And there's been, the Ukraine stuff. There have been, I don't know anything. I can't state anything specifically that I've seen that has been linked back to either government. But there have been a lot of, hacks here and there for, like, a bunch of the Russian sites were taken over pretty quickly. So Ukraine stuff was taken over pretty quickly. So there's been back and forth, but it's hard to say whether that was just, hacktivists or script kiddies or whatever.
That actually
or even what country they were from.
That brings up a great point that I did not put in the agenda or in the outline here, is that cybercrime.
I'm sorry, we can't talk about it then.
Right, we can't talk about that now. That cybercrime and cyber warfare can be done in a way that is rather anonymous. Like, how many times have you heard about, like, oh, attribution is hard? Well, yeah, attribution is hard. And that's the same problem here, right? Sure, it might be a complete coincidence, right, that this thing was timed right along with an attack. And then you can be like, well, it was probably cyber warfare. But was it? Can you prove it? Does it matter, I guess, at that point?
Right,
but...
and to the average person, attribution is utterly and completely pointless. It's a I wonder or I want to blame somebody. That's it.
Yeah, well, we always tie it back to...
It doesn't matter if you know who it was. It's irrelevant. We
tie it back to the who's at fault, because within the borders of the country, who's at fault can then be held legally liable. Well, if you're a different nation, it's kind of harder.
Well,
right. So,
military rules of engagement and things like the Geneva Convention are there for a reason. It's why, uniformed military personnel have to wear a uniform that identifies them as a member of a nation state.
Right.
And they are treated differently than if they don't. The they're treated as like enemy terrorists, which they don't need to be treated as prisoners of war. They don't need to be uh, treated humanely. I mean, there's a whole
Right.
bunch of stuff there.
Which is why, unless whatever activity you're talking about rises to the level of the federal government, attribution is almost pointless. Like I mean, it's
Well,
incredibly difficult to do to begin with.
It's not
but,
pointless if they are within the same borders as the thing they're attacking, because then the legal system can actually have an effect, right? If you can conclusively prove, if I hacked into Mark's systems and caused some sort of harm to Mark, and Mark can prove that I did it, Mark can then seek legal action against me. It's really the same concept as if, the U.S. government were to break into Mark's
I guess my
systems
point is,
and cause harm, and he can then seek legal.
Why are you touching my shit, Nate?
Yeah, right. Well, you're just a great example.
I guess my point is, unless you are part of the legal system in one way or another, or part of the government in when this is a larger thing, like, your average person doesn't need to know who who it's attributed to. Like that's a legal thing, right? Like the most people, that's not something you need to worry about, and it causes confusion and problems when things are falsely attributed, and we're jumping up and down about like, Russia attacked the blah 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 blah, and here it was like,
that it was some kid
Jimmy
in the
down the street,
right?
Like,
because
somebody came out and said like,
I remember now that there was one. I don't remember the details now, but there was a service that was taken down. It might have been AWS and or Slack, was it? I forget what it was. And everyone's like, "Oh, it's a nation state attack!" Rah, 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 rah. And it turned out it was some kid who was upset about some gaming service. I can't remember the details, but I remember talking about it even on this show.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And
and
we all dug into it like, oh, what was this? And then we all of a sudden the after action report comes out and it's like, oh, it was just some kid pissed off that he was killed in WoW or something.
Right, because the traffic that was used to attack you came from Russia or Sweden or Canada doesn't mean that it wasn't
my homeland,
somebody in America that did it. It could have been somebody in one of those countries, or it could have bounced through 100 other servers. Like, this is why like attribution is incredibly difficult, because there's no pictures to like look at and say like that guy has the gun and the bullets
security.
are coming out, and
there's no security footage.
Good, bad.
Yeah.
I'm the guy with the gun. So
right.
To Nate's point, by the way, he brought it up a little while ago, and I've been trying to kind of get this observation in. Something like Facebook, being banned from Russia. There's a centuries old precedent called a military blockade. American Revolution, you had the British Navy sitting outside out of New York and whatnot to choke off trade. So just because guns aren't being fired actively, blockading is a legitimate tactic, a military tactic, which is often bloodless. And so the digital equivalent of that would be things like, Amazon shutting off access to Russia and
sanctions.
Facebook being, sanctions, right, stuff like that. I like to draw parallels, right? Here's the action in the physical world. Here's what the digital version of that looks like.
Yeah, it's a good comparison.
And I would argue that all these tech companies that have suspended service and stuff, that's basically a digital blockade to cause economic harm.
I would argue that Facebook getting booted out of Russia is completely irrelevant. But it's completely irrelevant what the law is, because in addition to Facebook getting booted out of Russia, and a bunch of services shutting down because sanctions and because we don't like Russia, other things like the open or the free, or I'm not even sure what term to use, the non-state controlled media establishments in Russia have all been shut down as well. Because, if there's only one place to get the news and it's controlled by the guy in charge, what's he going to say? I'm a bad guy, don't listen to me?
I saw I think it was on Twitter, someone had shared this little clip of what television is currently like in Russia. because all the
Oh yeah, I saw that.
all the TV outlets are controlled by the Russian government. And
Yes.
it's just this like stream of propaganda on every channel, and it's like Russians cheering and like, yay,
Yeah,
we're
that was-
going to war, or maybe not war, but you know what I mean.
That was
it's like
that
it's
was
all,
yeah. So for context, that was a specific event. So Putin did a rally, was basically the only thing you can call it. Some big rally in what appeared to be an arena of some sort. And I know what clip you're talking about because I saw the same thing. And the guy was just kind of like clicking through the channels, and they all had different views of the same thing.
You may have
That was
shared
all
it,
the
and that's why I saw it. I don't know.
Yeah, that was all the state controlled channels, which apparently are all of them now, showing the cameras of that particular rally because, well, I mean, that's the news. Putin's having a rally, and we're doing we got to get those Nazis out of Ukraine. We'll skip over the fact that the president's a Jewish guy, but yes, the Nazis.
Yeah, the
So,
Nazis. The
you know.
Nazis. The Nazis that also look
Because actually
like
getting-
children, and yeah.
Yes. That's why
because
we
as a
bomb
general-
hospitals.
As a general rule, getting rid of Nazis is a good idea.
I agree
You
with
just gotta
that.
Make sure that they're actual Nazis.
You have to, you
I
have to
have
actually
a
be
sweatshirt
sure that they're
says,
Nazis
punch your
first.
local Nazi.
Yeah, they actually have to
Yeah.
be like actual bad people, I think, and
Confirmed
actual Nazis.
Nazis.
Before confirmed Nazis. There we go. Attribution is hard, Mark.
Yeah, they're usually easy to identify because they usually have swastikas on them.
in some way, shape, or form. right?
Yes, or
Yeah.
you know.
It is funny how that works. They're
It's-
very
it's-
proud to be evil people. Anyway,
And if you ask them, they'll tell you. So,
usually
you
kind of
know,
like being vegan.
very easy. Yeah.
Sorry. There's probably vegan listeners
like
out there that
being
are like,
what?
I hate
Did
this
you-
Nate guy. He's always down on the
Did you-
vegans.
Did
Sorry.
you just call vegans Nazis?
No, I
don't-
didn't. I didn't. I really didn't.
I'm kidding. It's a joke.
I think he did.
Anyway,
He might.
sorry to all of our vegan listeners.
That's what I heard.
It's just the
Isn't it
running
going to be
joke.
great
really
that that's the first clip that we're going to have that goes viral?
Yeah, right.
You
Nate's
will.
calling vegans Nazis. Anyway, all right.
This self-proclaimed Dark Souls of IT podcast is anti-vegan and support Nazis.
All right. So let's
all
go.
right,
Let's
so-
go down our list here.
So all of this,
Nate,
We-
I'm a sysadmin. Should I be worried?
I think we've talked about all this, right? So, right, should you be worried as a sysadmin? And I think we've really touched on this already, right? So whether you're a sysadmin for your home Valheim server or a sysadmin for like the U.S. electric infrastructure, right? Yes, you should do your due diligence and make sure that your systems are protected.
You need both of those things for your Valheim server to run, by the way. So
Yeah.
protect them both. But
Yeah.
if you're like, if you work for like, I don't know, some local food market or something, like you don't need that for your Valheim server to run. So make sure you spend the time on Valheim.
I mean, ideally, you do
Right.
need it to run the Valheim server. I guess the Valheim server would continue to run even if the sysadmin starved to death. That's dark.
This is true.
Dark Souls of
That
IT
would be
This is
podcast.
dark.
Oh my god,
It's okay.
that just
You'll
sent
spawn back at
my
the
that-
campsite and you
that
go get your
sent-
souls.
that sent my brain to this dystopian future where all the people are dead, but all of the services are still running.
There's probably been a story about that.
I'm sure there is.
I know there's been movies or TV shows that incorporate that. So
Like they're all dead, but they had really good sysadmins. All the infrastructure's still up.
until that one thing fails and then everything collapses as a result.
Until that one library at the bottom of everybody's stack falls over
Breaks.
because it had a bug in it that ended on a certain date, and half the world's infrastructure
and it,
falls over.
and it might be NTP.
It might be
Might
NTP.
be NTP.
Might be Log4j. Anyway, so yeah, I think regardless,
We use Crony now.
yeah, any sysadmin should be doing their due diligence to protect their stuff. I don't care if you think you're a target for a nation state actor or not, because you could be a target for a nation state actor. And I think we covered this pretty well earlier. Initially I was in the camp of, okay, if you're like core infrastructure, you really need to worry. But I think, Jason, you painted a pretty good picture there. Even if you're just running a
Yeah,
Valheim
so-
server, you want it to be protected because it could
Right,
be
but-
used to then cause other
To-
harm.
Right. To be clear, and so that there's not, I know how wide we
Yeah, right.
our distribution is, so I don't want to panic the world here. To be clear,
There's riots
As a-
tomorrow. in the
as
street.
a
Iron Sysadmin
home
said where the
user-
world's ending.
Right. As a general rule, you should be doing the basics.
Yeah.
Have a firewall, keep up with patch management, like do all the basic things that you kind of would do with everything. And to be honest, like a lot of this stuff is like super, super simple now because all the tools kind of they're there ready to do this. And a lot of distros ship relatively secure to begin with.
Yep.
If you're okay, Mark is zombie
Yeah.
walking across the stream. That's great.
Mark with a K likes the stream. Thank you, Mark.
So if you're working for a larger company, yes, that at that point, like a nation state is not going to target Nate unless Nate is some big, important actor in some larger company that they're after.
Are you saying
So
I'm not important?
the chances of a nation state going after you're not important. Sorry.
Jason says I'm not
The chances
important.
of a nation state going after an individual are pretty low. They're going to go after like bigger targets. So if you're dealing with financial institutions, especially anything to do with like the energy grid, nuclear power, wastewater, like all of that, like any of those type of areas, like, yes, you should be on top of this. And if you're not, or if it's not being done, you should be shouting from the rooftops that this needs to be done. Are you going to get attacked? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, you're being attacked all the time. Everybody is.
Yeah, everybody is. I think that's pretty safe to assume.
Want to prove it? Go install the latest version of Windows on a machine and connect it directly to the internet with no firewall.
Oh, dude, I did an article about this.
And then let me know how long it takes to get hacked.
I did an
Right,
article
like-
about this might be a year or two ago now, where I forget what I was trying to illustrate, but I stood up a server on EC2, I think it was, with SSH open to the world,
Yeah.
and then I just waited for the first attempt, and it took minutes. Now, granted, that's EC2's IP
Yeah.
space. Everyone's attacking EC2 space all the time. But I mean, way back in the late 90s, right? I remember I was still working part-time. I was tinkering around with a Windows NT machine. I built it, and it was connected to my cable modem, right? Because this was the 90s, the late 90s, right? No one had firewalls yet at home. And I went to work. By the time I came home, it was compromised by Code Red.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
like a
I mean,
4-hour
you know,
shift, right? Gone. Came home, unplugged it, went to
my-
bed. The next morning, I wiped it.
My machines, which are locked down, get tens upon tens of thousands of hits a day of people probing, trying to get in, whether that's SSH or different web services. I mean, looking through web logs is hilarious because you see all the attacks on all the services you don't even have.
Right.
Because there's all this script kiddie crap go up there. It just sits and spins all day long. I mean, remember Configure
Mm-hmm.
from like, I don't know, well over a decade ago at this point. Configure's still out there, still probing, still infecting things.
Oh man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as long as there's something to
Insane.
infect, it'll keep going. You know?
Right. Like, fortunately it's dead, but like, it's benign, doesn't do anything, but it's still out there. And it's still like you can sit and watch logs, and every once in a while you'll see something
like-
try to hit you with Configure.
There's like one machine somewhere that keeps propagating Configure.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, do the basics. If you're working for a larger organization, hopefully that larger organization is already looking into this. I know companies that I have worked for, companies that I have consulted for, have reached out, looking for information and how to move forward with different things, simple things like, I guess what the one thing that seems to be popping up lately is that a lot of people are really concerned about ransomware. How do you cripple an economy? How do you cripple, entire swaths of a country? You don't necessarily need to like come in and attack and knock out their financial services or whatever. Like something simple like crypto, like cryptoware is like, if that comes in, ransomware is just going to like lock everything up. You might make some money on the side when they try to get rid of it, but like you're going to take major institutions down.
Yeah.
And that's happening outside of warfare.
And it's also
So that's
happening
something that
all
a
the
lot
time.
of people seem to be worried about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's on the rise again.
Yep.
So, these are all things that, you just kind of do the basics. Make sure you have backups. Follow 3-2-1.
Yeah,
3
Basics are the
backups.
basics for a reason, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And I mean, there's probably a lot of companies out there that aren't. I mean, I would hope that things are
Oh,
getting
God.
Lots
better.
of companies
Oh
that are not.
God! If we could be totally open about some of the crap we've seen as IT professionals,
Right,
people would be friggin' terrified.
right.
There's so many companies that don't do the basics.
Absolutely.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. People, I think, have this delusional idea that critical companies that they would know that run important IT stuff in their everyday
Look,
life are actually
the
all competent and
the
all stay up to date and do
there's
things well. Holy shit, that's
there
not the case.
there's this idea, right? That how could we possibly do it better than the big names in IT do, right? Like how can we host our email better
Easily.
than Gmail does? How can we, I don't know, run our website better than hosting on EC2 can, right? Well, that's because you can't see what is under the covers over there, right? There's like this blindness, and you just assume that it's better than you can do. I don't trust it at all.
If people
And-
knew, they'd be terrified. They
And,
would
and
lock it up.
remember, when you're doing this stuff at scale, it's significantly more difficult.
Yeah.
Like securing one server is kind of trivial. Securing 1,000 servers, not as trivial, especially when those 1,000 servers are across 100 networks and do 10,000 different things.
in a dozen
Because you can't just
geos.
blast out one template across all of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So there's, it gets extremely difficult and complex at larger scale, which is why larger companies have departments that do this. Some do it well, some don't.
Do not.
So
Take a look at companies like Microsoft just got popped.
Yeah.
Microsoft just got popped. So did Okta. Although, they didn't. They did. There's a whole drama around that whole thing.
I think you had that in the news then, right?
Yeah, that one's in the news. Something was compromised. Yes, several hundred different organizations were or are at risk. There's a lot of weird disinformation out there. They may have known about it 2 months ago, but maybe not.
No, we totally
It's
didn't. We
stupid.
would have told you.
Microsoft had source. I forget for what, but they had a bunch of source code released, right? Like, and this is from the new. This, I don't know how new they are, but there's a hacking group called Lapsus that perpetrated all this, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. But
I can't imagine what that must be
don't
like
know.
to have all of your source code freely available on the internet.
Right. This is one of those situations where attribution was easy because Lapsus came out and went, "Yep, that was us."
Yeah, right.
And maybe it's not as easy.
I don't know. Is it really true? Right? Are they just like? I remember.
Well,
Well,
they kept jumping up and down, screaming and yelling about how they hacked Okta, and they have all this proof. And Okta was like, "That didn't happen."
That didn't happen. Is Okta Russian? Anyway, so Mark, we're going to circle all the way back to the topic you started with you running at the front of the army with your American flag and your little 22 blinker.
Woo! Hey, 22s can do some real damage.
They can. I mean, it doesn't take much, right? A projectile, even if it's tiny, can still kill somebody.
Michael Corleone used a 22 to kill the corrupt cop and who was the mobster at the sit down in Godfather 1.
One of the biggest misconceptions with firearms, and I'll get off the firearm soapbox just about as quickly as I got onto it, is that a small weapon is somehow less dangerous than a large one.
No, because it'll bounce around inside of your skull, the bullet. Anyway,
yeah, right. So is it ethical, or maybe you might read legal, to participate as a citizen without any backing of a nation state in cyber warfare?
So I would say ethical and legal are two different things.
You're right.
In that scenario.
You're right. So
maybe I watched Red Dawn too much as a kid. Wolverines!
Yeah, my opinion is you're right. Ethics are somewhat subjective, right? But it's kind of it's a similar argument to the whole hacking back argument, right? Like someone's attacking my network. I'm going to send them a DDoS in return, right? Is that ethical, right? And the answer is generally no, because again, attribution is hard. You don't know if the thing you're attacking is actually the person that attacked you. And it's really the same thing as like, oh, somebody kicked me in the shin, so I punched them in the face. Well, you're kind of both in the wrong because you're condoning violence, right? But from a cyber warfare perspective, right? If you're some elite hack store and you think you can take down the Russian power grid, should you?
Yes.
If you are no,
Yeah.
no, the answer is
Iron Sysadmin does not condone Uncle Mark's opinion.
No, so somebody you and I know, Nate, and I won't give their name, but they're former FBI, and they had this discussion on Twitter a little while ago. Very simply, it is hacking in the U.S. is illegal. Period. End of story.
Doesn't matter what
There
the
is
purpose
one
is.
group
Doesn't matter.
apparently.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's apparently one group of people that can grant permission for something like this called that can grant you permission and it's something called an otherwise illegal activity authorization, which I don't know much about. But unless you have that authorization specifically, which apparently is very, very hard to come by, it is illegal to hack, even if it is outside of the country, almost especially if it's outside the country, because you can start kind of an international incident, but like it's illegal. Done. Like there's
Period.
no question.
Yeah. It's illegal.
Right, it's illegal.
But
Now,
is it ethical?
is it
Right?
ethical?
And that comes down to you and your ethics, right?
If you
Right.
could throw this little
And is it moral?
switch, if you could throw this little red switch and totally take out every Russian governmental IT system and cripple their ability to communicate and wage war, would you not throw the switch, even if you were caught?
So let me reverse that a little bit, because I'm not going to answer that question per se, but I'm going to say
Okay.
if the same thing were to happen in the U.S. and somebody threw a switch and shut down all the government systems, what would happen? Who gets hurt? Yes, it may stop the potentially stop the warfare, although probably not, because that's happening on land anyway. But who gets hurt in that scenario?
Well, the IRS, who I don't like anyway, because they keep screwing up and then charging me for it.
But if all the government systems shut down, I would argue that it's the citizens that are going to be in serious pain.
All of a sudden,
I don't know how Russia's set up, but that's possible.
Yeah, their government could be in anarchy
And
at that point. Yeah, and that's not good.
The one
Well, I mean, it could be
thing-
good. Maybe it's good. I don't know.
Well, so I think this is where I have a problem with the sanctions, right? So like I don't disagree that they're necessary, but that we're hurting people that shouldn't be hurt. I mean, part of the reasons that we're doing sanctions is we want their people to rise up and take him out of power.
Right.
But to do that, we're hurting those people who have nothing to do with this at all. Some of them may not even know what Ukraine is, right? Like think about the U.S. Like if we were doing something similar to this, like it's entirely possible that a good chunk of the population has no idea what's being attacked at
Right.
Oh,
Or
all.
why?
It has nothing to do with it.
Right, and agree or disagree with it.
Right. Or
right?
why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And whether they agree or disagree or know why or any of that is irrelevant, because it's not them doing it, it's the government.
Yeah.
So, and do we think the sanctions are actually hurting?
Logic.
I know. Do we think the sanctions are actually hurting Putin and his group? Because I think the answer is no.
How
I
about
think,
can we? Well, probably not yet, but I think you're right. The hope is that they eventually will.
I think
But
in
meanwhile, right,
the long
regular-
game, it is.
regular Russians will suffer.
Yeah.
Right. But how many people are going to get hurt and how many people are going to die in the long run? I mean, I know.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, we're just not letting them
So
have
this is
Facebook or whatever. But people are going to die. Like, look at, and some of this is on Russia, obviously. This is on Putin. Like, people that are actually protesting and going out there and saying like, we don't like Putin, and they're going, welcome to your 18-month sentence in jail.
Right.
Done.
Yep.
Because you said I don't like Putin. That's
And
it. That's all you had to do.
And that's the unfortunate reality of what it's like over there.
Right.
But that's
So
not
what
new.
is it going to take? Like, how many people have to rise? No, it's not necessarily new, but we're we are helping force people into that position, like it's one of those things that like I have trouble reconciling ethically and morally and getting behind, but I don't have an answer on what we could do instead.
But on the other hand,
I don't know.
On the other hand, you, as a country that disagrees with the leadership of another country, that's like actively doing some sort of atrocity, something that we absolutely can't just look the other way. We can't just keep doing business with that country, right? So they're really like you.
Yep, exactly.
Yes, we're hurting the people, but I don't know that we have a different choice, right?
Right. That's why I said, like, I don't disagree with it per se, but I disagree with it. Yeah. And I understand why it's being done, but I hate it.
If it could be done in such a way that it did not hurt the people, then yes, we should do it that way. But I don't know that that's possible.
I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
that's not the way the world works.
Yeah.
And it's actually illegal for the United States. Like it's our law. We could not legally try and like do something like assassinate Putin. That's completely against U.S. law. The president's not allowed to do something like that.
Yeah.
Jason's
like, but
there's gray areas. Yeah, there's gray areas. You cannot legally call for the assassination of a foreign leader. That I know is illegal, which is there's a big controversy about that recently.
If they die as collateral damage in a battle,
senators that's saying that, but right. So to say that the U.S. doesn't do that is a lie. Like, yes, we have absolutely assassinated people. Like, there's no question that that's happened. But if you were to go in and assassinate Putin, what happens? And I honestly don't know, because I don't know anybody else. Like, I don't know anything about the rest of who's there and like who takes his place. Like, is it better? Is it worse?
And who upholds that law? Do we just feel really bad about ourselves for a couple of weeks? Like, does someone come in and arrest the president?
Oh, it's
what?
That's a black bag. That's a black bag operation. It never happened.
Right.
And if somebody catches the guys that did it, they're disavowed. Come on, like
so we're getting
Ford issued an executive order about this in '76.
We're getting dangerously. We're getting dangerously close to politics, and that's. I mean, I kind of thought that this could be where we end up going, but
this whole episode's been about politics.
Yeah, but not. Well, whatever. not necessarily U.S. politics. It's more about general step back, high level politics.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right, and that's fine because it's an ugly situation, right? There's
no
easy answer.
It very is. It very much is. All right, so let's see. The only thing I had left in here, and this isn't necessarily cyber warfare because we talked about this a little bit, but I tried to come up with sort of a high level like list of companies that are trying to contribute by pulling services away from Russia. It's not quite cyber warfare, but it's kind of like the same kind of concept, right? It's like a blockade, right? So big companies you've heard of, like Apple.
My metaphor, would you?
Okay, it's a blockade. We're blockading Russia. Companies like Apple, Google, Red Hat has, right? We have a public post about this, although it's not in the link that I put at the bottom here. Microsoft, MasterCard, and Visa. Airbus, right? You may have heard them. They like fly things. Meta, of course, because I think they're now illegal there anyway. And a whole bunch more. I put a link to really the first article I found that had a list. It's not conclusive because, like, Red Hat's not on the list, even though I know we pull things out of Russia. But that's in the show notes as well. If anybody's curious, if some people are very passionate about, I want to support companies that are supporting causes that I care about, and if you care about whether they're dealing with Russia or not, it might be something to look into, right? So.
Yeah, I think the companies that are pulling out is not a cyber warfare thing. I think that's a capitalism
You're right.
thing.
It's a blockade, like Mark said. It's a similar concept to a blockade, where it's
yeah, but it's not a blockade. It's a market force blockade as opposed to a government blockade.
Yeah,
is kind of the way I'd put it.
Yeah, but
right? Like, they're pulling out because people are like, we won't support you unless you pull out of there, and the companies go, I make $50 there and I make $5 million here. Like, we're done.
Yeah,
and just walk away.
I mean, maybe it's the idealist in me thinking that there were a lot of companies that pulled out before that was probably
there are some
pressure to have done so.
Yeah, there are some I think that are doing it because they think it's the right thing as a company. Like they actually are, we think we should be backing the Ukraine, and
Yeah, we don't
we're
want to
gonna step out of
support
Russia.
Russia's economy, which is really what it comes down to.
The cynic,
right?
the cynic in me thinks that.
It's all
Well,
for
I mean, there's
publicity.
that, and the fact that the ruble isn't worth anything anymore, so they can't afford anything at those companies anyway. And the cynic in me thinks that there's far more companies that have stepped out because they've looked at it from a marketing perspective and gone, if we stay, yeah, we're going to back out. I mean, look at I think it's Burger King that took a kind of a bit of a hit, where they got beat up a little bit for not pulling out of Russia, and they're like, look, corporate pulled out of Russia, we can't shut down their restaurants. It's a Russian oligarch that owns them, and they won't close.
Right.
But we won't do business with them anymore. So they're completely on their own.
Yeah.
But we can't stop them. I mean, who's going to go into Russia and tell them, like, you can't use Burger King anymore? No. Like, that's like, good luck. So, I think cynically, I think a lot of it was marketing and just kind of seeing what was coming down the pike.
Yeah.
But I do know that there were what I would consider, good folks or good companies that were there that were like, this is the right thing to do because what Russia is doing is just wrong.
I think that's a great thought to close it on. What Russia's doing is just wrong. I think the three of us on this show can at least agree on that. All right, so we're going to go to a break. Folks, we are going to do the usual split the show in two. So if you've listened to the first half and you want to hear things like our normal show updates and the news in the second half, you're going to look for part B of episode 118. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Thanks for listening and watching and whatever you're doing. And for those of you on the live stream, we'll be back in a few minutes. We're just going to, refresh our drinks and, maybe stretch our legs or whatever, right? It's going to get awkward if I keep going on that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and find the waiting page. And, folks, we will see you
Press the button.
in a few.
Press the button,
Sorry,
Frank.
I hit the wrong one. Oh, wait.
Push the button, Frank.
Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you.
I play that sound effect to let people know we're back, and I'm just thinking to myself right now, there's a little sound clip that plays while we're on break that leads up with that and plays a little ad, then closes with that. So, there could totally be people that have no idea we're back. Hey, we're back, everybody! Come on back! Come back from the fridge or whatever you were doing. Maybe you have someone, a very tall,
Oh boy.
gangly person.
Yeah, there's a creep behind me. I know.
Creepy smiling face behind you.
He appears every a couple times a year. He's here.
There's like internet rumors about tall gangly people. Is that who that is? Oh, he's totally distracted. Okay, so anyway. Let me get back to the show notes. So we've got the usual housekeeping stuff to get through. The first thing is our usual announcement-y stuff. And the announcements consist of our Patreon updates. So we've had a couple shufflings and whatnot in the Patreon list here. See if you guys can notice the difference. We got Zed Thor, name pending 197, Jeremy, Aranami, Andrew, Tatro, Bruce, Robert, Matt, David, Solemn with a 0 and a 3, Trooper-ish, Linux, Sys666, Mark with a K, The Mentor, Mark with a C, Julius, Andy, J, Charles, and 22532. I just realized I forgot to take out Charles's last name. Fix that quick. Our good old friend 2. By the way, I
feel like you've sorted them somehow.
No, it's the same sort it's always been.
Huh.
This is the sort that Patreon gives them to me is newest patron to oldest patron, and that's the way the list is.
I don't remember Zed.
No.
Are we missing some? I feel like we're missing a name, though.
We're missing one. I'm not going to call it out, though, because they were a long-time patron, and I'm not going to call them out for not being a patron anymore. I want to thank them for their patronage. But yes, there's one.
Sure,
there's one.
Sure.
There's one name missing from the list.
Someone is missing, and I can't figure out who.
Yep.
But that's fine.
Yep. So we appreciate.
Thank you for your loyalty for all those years.
Yep. We appreciate your patronage.
We lost a Patreon.
We lost one.
We lost a Patreon.
However,
I'm sorry. I was talking to the creeper.
However, somebody else increased their patronage, which more than accounted for the one we lost. So it's fine.
Oh, that's cool.
I want to put out a heartfelt apology to the Patreon that we lost. I'm so sorry for the way that Nate and Mark act. It's I understand.
It's all
I've been working with them. Someday I hope that they'll understand.
I'm really just a prisoner here. They don't let me out. This is really a virtual background.
Right.
Jason is actually tied up in my basement, and he's forced to.
I'm just an AI.
Every so frequently.
I'm just an AI. This is all computer generated. Pretty good, huh? I did all this work myself.
Sorry, I'm fixing that name mistake.
Stop trying to turn me off.
The closing credits there.
You would turn us into the basilisk, wouldn't you? You would turn us right in.
Turn you into the... Oh, my God. Are you talking philosophy?
Yeah.
I know. It's unfortunate that I know what you're talking about. My son brought this up. No.
I'm just going to drink.
That is like the worst. Yes, that broke my brain. Please don't.
All right. So, right.
Did.
Brain is broken. Jason's AI brain. Virtual
Ow.
background is broken. Right. So, yeah. If thank you to our patrons, and if you want to support the show via purchasing merch, you can do so on Teespring. I still haven't moved it. I keep saying I'm going to move it. Realistically, I'm probably never going to. But when I do, you'll hear about it here. Teespring.com/stores/.
And you'll be sorry that you didn't get it before you moved it.
I don't know that you'll be sorry. It might be better. It might be worse. Who knows, right? But someday. Let's see.
The Dark Souls of IT podcast.
Oh, I forgot to put this in the notes, but another cool announcement. Jason and I were invited to, the Central Indiana Linux Users Group. Virtually, of course, because we're nowhere near Central Indiana. That would be a long
Nate's
drive.
driving.
Hey, I used to drive us to Louisville. It can't be that much worse.
I had nothing to do with that. I totally didn't almost kill us the first year.
Yeah. All because of that stupid piece of paper
Guys,
I didn't get signed with the college in
stories.
time. Anyway.
Yeah. Nate totally didn't drive when I pulled over and said, if you don't drive, we're going to die.
Well, no, I couldn't do that. I wasn't on the approved driver's list, so there's no way I did that. There's no way.
Right.
There's no way I drove.
Which is why I drove asleep.
That's why. Yeah,
Yep.
You drove in your sleep. You didn't know any of what happened. Honestly, you probably didn't
I'm a
know
good
any of what
driver in my
happened
sleep.
because the second I took over, you passed out. So.
Yes, I did.
So anyway, a fellow Red Hatter reached out to me and said, "Hey, we've listened to your show. We know you're a Red Hatter." They hunted me down. They found my name. Not that it's that hard. And they said, "Hey, come on over and talk about, how you started the show, why you started the show. Give us, kind of a story and maybe a little bit of an intro on like how to get started with a podcast." Which surprisingly is a talk I've given a couple times. It's something I made for B-Sides Delaware back in 2018, and I've given it a couple times since then. And I even give it to. We ran a podcasting club for a little while with the Red Hat Accelerators, which is the customer advocacy group that Mark got me into when I was still a customer, and now I'm part of as a Red Hatter. So the point is, we were invited there on the 6th of April. We're going to do that. I don't know if there's any kind of a live stream that I can let you guys tune into, but that would be cool if there is, and I'll let you know if there is. But yeah, it's going to be fun, I think. So, just an announcement. I see Mark with a K in there. Wants an Iron Sysadmin fan meetup. I don't know how that would work. I don't know how many of our fans are close enough to actually meet up. All right, so if you're in Central Indiana and you know of the Central Indiana Linux Users Group, if you attend on 4/6, you can see Jason and I virtually talk about Iron Sysadmin podcast. And Mark, I think there'll be no problem with you attending as well. They might let you in.
Yeah, all right. That's
But
fine.
you have to go to Indiana for it.
I'm not going to Indiana.
And sing.
And you have to
I'm not-
sing.
I can sing, but I'm not going to Indiana.
You can sing, but you're
I
not
actually
going to
have
Indiana.
to go to, I'm traveling next week, actually. I'm going to Raleigh for a few days.
Oh,
So that'll be
cool.
fun.
You'll be one of the first people I know to go back to the tower. I assume that's why you're going to Raleigh. You're not just going there to go get
Yeah.
barbecue and come home. that would be
There would
valid
probably
though.
be
There's good barbecue there.
No,
I mean, Raleigh's not the first place I'd go if I was looking for good barbecue.
Maybe
Just
not the
saying.
first place, but
not
I know there's
first.
barbecue there.
No,
I mean-
they've
There's
got
actually a very good
there's-
barbecue place
there's-
there.
The pit there is excellent.
Yeah, that's where I went.
Restaurant called-
During new hire orientation, I think I ate there 3 times out of the 4 days I was there because it was that good. So anyway, yeah, that's our usual announcement-y stuff. Unless either of you had announcements you wanted to throw in there, we can move along into chat.
No,
No? All right. So let's see. What do I have going on?
you can move to chat.
Yeah, fan meetup at Nate's house. I mean, why not? Everybody else is here.
Phew.
You'll drop the address. All right. Yeah, sure. Go right ahead and do that. I'm sure they could find it if they wanted to. Anyway, usually I have some cool 3D printer project to talk about, and I'm going to be honest. For the
Like a
past
creepy-ass doll.
month and a half, I really haven't 3D printed much. The last thing I 3D printed was this. You can 3D print chainmail and my daughter asked me to print some just because she wanted it to, as like a fidget toy, and I did that. That was cool. But I'm working. I just found
chainmail for the cat.
no, not for the cat. We did do cat armor though. You've seen that. But I'm working on this like cool modular shelf system that I found. This is one of the wall plates, right? So this goes on the wall. If you're watching the if you're not watching the live stream, you're like, I don't know what he's talking about. This goes on the wall, then the shelves like clip onto the front of them, and then you can build them in like this crazy. There's all kinds of different shapes and sizes of shelves, and you can basically build out your own little shelf system. So I'm printing out one of them to try to see how sturdy they are and stuff. And what?
For those listening to the podcast, Nate held up a piece of black plastic, roughly in a square, with some holes in it,
and funny lines and shapes and stuff too. Look at it; it's pretty
and
cool.
some edges and stuff.
It looks kind of like the side of a Borg cube. Maybe I should just print 6 of
It will be
these.
assimilated.
Yeah.
If you look at the show notes, I'm sure there's a link.
So yeah,
Will be by now.
that's my only awesome 3D printing project. I was in a Dungeons and Dragons game on Roll20 the other day. They've got dark mode now. I don't know why that's important, but I found it to be really cool. It's actually a really nice UI improvement.
It is. I turned it off.
You don't like dark mode?
It didn't last long. It's neat up until a point where you need certain information and you realize that their dark mode sucks for that. So
I didn't run
going
into
back
that.
to your 3D printing, there's a metal filament, right?
That
I
would
know,
actually
but
be kinda
I
cool.
couldn't get it in.
That would be kind of cool.
If you sell your firstborn and
Yeah.
probably most of your limbs, you can afford to use it.
Yeah, well, don't you need a special
That's
printer for
hardly
that?
worth it.
No, you can print it with your printer.
Really?
You may need a special nozzle.
The last
Yes.
time I saw a metal
So
filament, it
it's-
was similar to like an arc welder, and it would actually lay down a dot.
I can
of-
send you a link to it. It's multi-process, so you got to print,
Okay.
and then there's something else you have to do. I don't like some other process
I
that has
don't-
to go through.
I don't
but yes,
really
it'll work in your
need-
printer.
I don't really need metal shelves. This thing is
It
surprisingly
was for the
sturdy.
chain.
and
It was for the chainmail.
okay. and
It was for the chainmail.
okay,
It wasn't for the
chainmail.
shelves.
All right. Okay. Fine. Well, I'll give you that then. Anyway.
Okay, good. Go on with your dark mode.
Well, that was just like a tidbit. That's not going to take any more than, hey, Roll20 has dark mode now. And I turned it on for the game, and I thought it worked pretty well. Apparently, Jason's experience is different than mine, but I thought it was good. And because April 6th isn't going to be busy enough with trying to prepare a presentation for the Central Indiana Linux Users Group, I've also been invited to talk on the RHEL Presents show, which is hosted by a fellow Red Hatter and technical marketing manager, Eric, who we had on the show a month and a half or 2 months ago. I'm going to be talking about my home lab setup that uses Podman containers. So if anybody has time during the day, it's like 2 p.m., I think
Right.
it'll be Eastern time. And it should be a good time.
Did I miss that episode
Did you miss what episode? When Eric was on?
with the one with Aragon? I feel like I don't remember that.
You might not have been here. It might have been me and Jason. We talked about how the role of a sysadmin has changed over the years. Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah,
You
I
couldn't
think
make
I
it. You had a
was-
customer visit or something that day, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
You missed out.
Yeah.
We did say we'd
Was
have him
that
back
it?
on
It
the
was.
show
I
sometime.
could have sworn it was like he hates that guy or something.
That's what it was.
No, I don't-
Secretly, he told me
I'm
that.
pretty
I hate
sure
that
it's
guy. I
someone
can't be on the show with him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
What customer visit would it have been?
No, he's like, oh, well, go look back. Maybe there's notes. Maybe there's probably some chat log somewhere of me saying,
it-
hey, Mark, are
was
you
it in
going to be there? Eric's
December?
going to be on the show. And you're like, no, I can't. I have to go visit this this customer I love so much.
Well, wait. Was it beginning of December? Was it that long ago? Because that's the last time I remember going to a customer. I flew in on a Thursday. I drove up on Thursday night.
Do you really want me to go look this up now? It might have
No,
been.
no,
It might have been
we're-
that long ago.
We're talking about
I don't think it was that
January
long ago.
20 January 27th.
There-
January 27th.
There you go.
Eric,
January
the IT guy.
27th. I
Google
forget.
is your friend.
Mark, I forget why you couldn't make it, but I'm pretty sure you couldn't, and you were very
Well, now I'm
bummed
gonna-
about that
now I'm
because
gonna
you
look.
wanted to talk about that topic, and then you couldn't come. Oh no, you were visiting your son. You were visiting your son at college, and you didn't think you'd be home in time, and you weren't. I'm almost
Oh,
positive that's what it was.
That's sounds right. It was a weird day off situation. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah, I think I took PTO.
Yeah.
To go that day because I had something else. That might have been the same weekend as Klondike Derby.
That I don't know.
It was the same weekend as something else that I had to do. So we went on Thursday so that we wouldn't break the. Yeah, okay, whatever. This is so not important.
We'll consult with your personal assistant, see if they can tell us what you were doing that day.
I appreciate that. Have people talk to my people.
Let's see. The only reason I'm bringing this one up is because we have talked about it on the show before. I don't know if anybody cares, but you remember we had a show where we made fun of C by GE. Then I bought a bunch of C by GE devices because I was trying to do smart homey stuff. Then I grew to hate them and started slowly replacing them with Tasmota devices, like the light bulbs in this room and the LED strip that I've talked about so much that Mark doesn't want to hear me say the word hex lamp ever again.
Familiar.
Well, I have replaced the last C by GE device as of about 3 weeks ago. I put a new LED strip in our living room where we had one behind the TV for like an accent light. And now that's WLED instead of C by GE. All of my C by GE devices are in this closet because I spent money on them and I can't bring myself to throw them away, even though I hate them. I'm very conflicted about this. But anyway, they're in there. But they're not in use anymore. That's how you end up a hoarder. Yes, you should see my closet, man. I do, however, every now and then go through the closet and throw things away. I just have to feel better about holding on to them for a short amount of time at least, because I might use them again.
You're not a true hoarder.
Even though I won't.
You're not a true hoarder until your obituary reads "Death by Stack."
Death by Stack.
When the stack falls over and kills you,
so,
then you're a true hoarder.
Working at Red Hat, that has a whole different meaning, because there are probably OpenStack TAMs that would be like, this is going to kill me someday.
Most likely.
Anyway, and the last thing I had is actually the one I may actually spend a little more time on talking about, and that is, I talked, and Mark, I think you weren't here for this one either. In fact, I think every conversation I've had about this, which I thought you would have actually been interested in, I don't think you've been around for any of these conversations, but we've talked about an open source self-hosted metaverse deployment. We talked about...
I've been on the metaverse conversations.
You've been on the conversations, but I don't know if you've seen this project. This project is called VR Space, and it is exactly what we described.
Okay.
Except it's not Minecraft, which is essentially what we described when we talked about it. So VR Space is a thing I've talked about on the show before. It is an open source VR deployment or VR server that you can run on just about anything that has enough, CPU and memory to run. It's a Java application, but so is Minecraft. So shut up. But it runs the deployment.
Log4j.
I don't know if it has Log4j, honestly, in the background. It's a Spring Boot application. I don't know anything about these technologies. All I know is that it is...
Why, when I go to the homepage, am I running around on this platform and can't stop?
Because you can't stop. So VRSpace.org takes you directly to a demo of the application, right? And you can't even...
but like I'm moving the mouse to try, like I'm stuck against one of these stargates, and I can turn using the mouse, but like my character won't stop walking.
I don't know why it won't stop walking. Usually W, A, S, and D make you walk around like any other game. Have you ever gamed, Mark? Are you familiar with how to game on a PC?
Shut up.
Because that's kind of how it works.
Anyway, I was gaming on a PC long before you were born.
Probably. So my point is that I found out about VR Space a little while ago. I did talk about it on the show, similar to what I'm doing today. I've gotten at least a little involved in the project. I'm not a developer, right? But I'm just trying to do whatever I can to try to help move the project along, which is exactly what you should do for an open source project that you care about, even if you're not a developer. So I've been trying to help them debug issues. I've been trying to help them by spreading the word. I've been talking about this to pretty much every Red Hatter I ever run across on any social meeting ever. But what I did recently was I containerized it and put it up on Docker Hub. Yes, I could have put it on Quay because I'm a good Red Hatter, but really, realistically, I wanted to put it somewhere where anybody who's like, I wonder what this VR space thing is, Docker run VR space, could just run it, right? And face it, Docker Hub is where to put something like that. So it's on Docker Hub. It's kind of in its infancy, both from the project perspective and from my own talent as, writing a Docker container. But if anybody's curious about running their own VR space, you can now just spin up a Docker container and try it out. And I think I just think that that's going to make it a little more attainable for folks that maybe don't want to deploy a VM to put VR space on. Instead, they just want to fire up a container on their really any machine, Windows, Mac, or Linux, right? So go check it out. And if you want to help contribute to it, there's ways to do that. If you want to help me with the container, let me know. If you're better at sort of containerizing applications, I think I did an okay job. But yeah. So that's out there. I hope somebody goes and checks it out and loves it. Mark, you should too. You're like, why? I can't walk around in this thing. And that's most of what I had to chat about today. I think that's everything I had to chat about today. Mark, what do you got going on?
What do I got going on? So let's see. What did I actually put? All right. So
Surprise, Elden Ring.
well, yeah. I bought. So I finished up Horizon Zero Dawn in time to buy Forbidden West, and I enjoyed the heck out of Forbidden West. And meanwhile, people keep talking about this Elden Ring thing. I'm like, I don't know I don't really know what that is. And I did a little reading on it. Heard there was some buzz around it, so I ended up grabbing it. And after I played it a tiny little bit before finishing Forbidden West, I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. I think maybe. But I'm going to just wait until I finish Forbidden West. So I finished Forbidden West, and Elden Ring has been like my pretty much every friggin' night after my wife and I are done watching TV and she goes, like upstairs or whatever, I fire it up. 3D printing, I actually printed, this is a little test print of Pot Boy, who's one of the creatures in the game. It's like an animated pot.
Cool.
Yeah, that'll try and smash it. But it's not the first Soulsborne game, which is the genre. I actually played Bloodborne I got about halfway through Bloodborne on the PS4. But Bloodborne, as fun as it was, it had a couple of things that kind of I didn't particularly care for. First of all, they maybe it gets better later in the game, but Bloodborne is very dark, and by dark I mean it's very the world looks very dreary. It's a lot of black and gray and shadows. And Elden Ring, it's like, oh my god, they actually discovered the color green.
They found lighting,
and there's a sky like in the day, and that's pretty refreshing.
So it's like
in a lot of ways.
like the swamp in Valheim versus the meadows.
Elden Ring feels like the meadows at first. If the meadows had giant friggin' golden knights on horseback that kill you because you don't know any better.
In one shot.
Because you're not supposed to fight that knight yet. But so the other thing about Bloodborne is that Bloodborne, you're basically going to play a melee character. You have certain ranged weapons, but they're more for utility and for parrying, which is weird saying that out loud, but in the game it makes sense. But Bloodborne, you're essentially going to be a melee build, whereas in Elden Ring, I'm rocking a sorcerer build. I also have a blue crystal sword that's pretty sweet. But I spend a lot of time flinging magic rocks at things to kill them, rather than having to get right in their faces.
Magic rocks.
So that's
Okay.
a lot of fun. And some of the Souls games, Bloodborne had this a little bit, although I understand it wasn't as bad as some of them. You will get to a point where you have to kill a particular boss to go forward. Like you're stuck until you kill that boss. Elden Ring, because it's got this open world aspect to it, it is completely valid to like this boss is is just pounding me. I'll just go somewhere else and get stronger and
Yeah,
level up and
that's
find
cool.
better gear. And then you'll be more able to take the boss when you're ready. So that aspect of it is really pretty cool. It they dispense with a lot of stuff that you think you're going to miss. Like there is no quest log. There are no automatic map markers to show you where to go. You actually have to figure out a lot of stuff on your own by reading the text on items, by
That
figuring out
does
environmental clues.
it does feel like a. I
And
mean, people who've only played modern RPGs would be like, "Why would you get rid of that?" But you may forget that that was pretty
it
commonplace 20 years ago. There was no quest log
and
or like
and
marker to tell you exactly where to go. They were very helpful
and
things,
the
but
game yeah, and the game doesn't drag you. I mean, it does have a mechanic with these golden rays that shoot from the sights of grace, which say in vague terms, boss is this way. And if you follow that path, you'll eventually get to a story boss. But the game is not holding your hand and dragging you
right.
on a rail. There's so much side exploration and so many things hidden in the world. And in fact, one of the design decisions they seem to have made is we do not want people to find everything, especially on the first playthrough. And so the adventure is not checking off your quest log and collecting 10 bear butts and bringing them back to this NPC with the exclamation point over its head. The adventure is actually exploring and discovering secrets and collecting like resources to upgrade your gear and stuff. But everybody is really going to have, there would be no master walkthrough that everybody goes through. Like it's like night and day from Forbidden West. Like Forbidden West told a great story, but you're like the chosen one, and Aloy is a great character, and there's lots of cinematics, and you got the full quest log experience, the UI that shows you everywhere to go. And at the end of my playthrough, I still had a whole shitload of side quests and stuff that I didn't do, and I was feeling guilty about it. Elden Ring, it's like, all right, go, figure it out.
Have
Oh,
fun.
fill enough big guys to become Elden Lord. You'll figure that out eventually what that actually means. And if you resist the temptation to like run right to the wikis or run right to the YouTube videos, I can't tell you how many delightful little giggling noises have come out of me when I've discovered something just really cool. Or when there's a tough boss or a tough mini boss and I kick the crap out of them, like it's a feeling of accomplishment because there's no difficulty slider. I'll admit it. I took the difficulty slider in Horizon and slid it to easy first
Hmm.
because I felt like I was just like some of the combat felt too much like the enemies were like bullet sponges. But there's an argument in favor of don't let the player select the difficulty mode
Yeah.
because it forces them to deal with the experience as intended.
Yeah.
And you could argue, well, you could just have the willpower to not slide the difficulty. Well, honestly, I don't have that willpower. I slide the difficulty.
I'm guilty of
So,
that too because there's a lot of games where I don't want to sit down and be beaten up. I just want to sit down and enjoy the game, and sometimes turning down the difficulty is the way to do that, right? Because I'm
well,
not the.
Elden Ring,
Go ahead.
yeah. If I'm tired of beating my head against a boss, so there's this magic school in the game. Uh, and with most people's progression, it's going to be the third, what's called story boss. There's like 70 or 80 bosses in the game, and a boss I'll define as a fight where if you kill that creature, it's gone. Like most of the time, when you rest at the site of grace, it repopulates all the monsters in the area, except for bosses you've killed. So there's like 70 or 80 bosses that once they're dead, they're dead, dead. Um, so I was beating my head against the Hogwarts boss for days. And I was trying different strategies. I was summoning other players to help, blah 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 blah. And every so often I'd be like, all right, this is bullshit. I need to go do something else for a while. So I would just warp to a different site of grace, because the fast travel's pretty excellent. You can warp to any site of grace you've been to already, as long as you're not in combat, and hop on my horse Torrent and go explore and go do some other stuff. And then I'm like, okay, I think I got a new idea for how to deal with Hogwarts. Bam, 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 bam. Turns me into her little bitch. And I finally beat her last night with a different strategy and with the help of another player, and that felt so good. And I'm wearing her robe now. Not like in
Just
real
because.
life in game.
Yeah.
Well, because it looks cool.
They made a movie about that.
But I'll tell you, I've been watching some YouTube videos, opinion pieces about, what makes a Souls game and the target audience and stuff. And there is definitely an audience for this. This game is doing fantastic. It has sold gajillions of copies. And it's because it's delivering a very specific experience that a very specific type of gamer wants. And for a lot of people, it's their first Souls game. And again, because of the open world, it's not as punishing. Yes, there are fights in there that are ridiculously brutal, but they're all learnable too. Like, the combat's actually very methodical. It's not it's not necessarily all about having the fastest reflexes. It's about learning an enemy's moves and intentionally dodging at the right time or rolling at the right time or reading the attacks, and then the enemy stops to recover themselves, and that's when you got your opening, and then hitting the enemy in certain weak points to make them stagger. And it's actually a lot more methodical than a lot of fighting games. So I would argue that anybody who's willing to pay attention and put the time in, you don't need to be a really twitchy gamer. You can learn the fights and learn the combos and beat the game. So satisfying.
Pattern recognition.
A lot of it is pattern recognition. You're absolutely right.
And that's exactly what gaming was. Like, classic gaming was all about pattern recognition. And then all the game developers are like, we need to get away from this. It's too repetitious, yada, yada, yada. And now we're going back to it. Everything old is new again.
But if you're interested in watching me roll around like an idiot and fight bosses and stuff, I dropped a link to my Elden Ring playlist in the show notes.
Cool.
The PS5 has a beautiful system for recording recent gameplay, and I think you can set a PC up to do this if you want to. But like the PS5, it's like stupid easy. You hit the one button on the controller.
They had
publish recent gameplay, and it can be like the last 30 seconds, last minute, last 3 minutes, last 5 minutes, and then you can trim it right on the spot. So every time I kill a boss, I immediately save the gameplay, trim the video, throw it up to YouTube, and at the end of the night, I edit them with the titles and stuff. So I'm documenting as I kill every boss.
I remember the PS4 had made some strides in making sharing content a lot easier. So the
5 is better.
It stands to reason that they would have improved it more with the 5. That's cool.
The 5 is a beautiful system. Like if you're at all, I was a little hesitant. Do I really want a PS5? I've invested in the gaming rig, which in some ways is starting to get a little long in the tooth, and I enjoyed the 4. Oh my God, the 5 is just chef kiss. It's a beautiful system.
Cool.
So Elden Ring's been what I've been playing, and then I put something. What else did I put on the agenda? Oh yeah,
this little thing that happened at work.
This is like, I am now managing a team of technical account managers. I've actually pivoted to a manager role, which is something I never thought I'd really do.
In fact, you've said you wouldn't. I remember that.
I know. But things lined up kind of perfectly, and because of some reorgs going on in the company and the shifting role of the TAM, I feel it's a good way for me to defend the position.
No, Mark's a hypocrite. This is what you need to hear out of this.
No.
This just means he's management now, and eventually we're gonna have to roll him out of the podcast because he's just not gonna be technical anymore.
Yep.
Damn.
Yep. It's funny. I said the exact same thing after I heard the announcement. I even wrote you that. Like, now we got to get you out. Yes. Hang your head in shame.
No, I challenged that. First of all, my first manager, Dave, even though he had been a manager for a bit, I mean, he did a lot of coding for like to create reporting tools and other things like that. And he was you can at Red Hat, you can keep your technical edge as a manager.
Yeah.
It's obviously
Oh,
not
yeah,
as
yeah,
critical
yeah.
a part, but like I now get to have conversations with salespeople and customers about, hey, this is the TAM service, this is why you want it. And if I can't talk intelligently technically, that's pointless. But yeah, it was something I was not thinking I was going to do, but just the way the stars aligned, the circumstances, I'm like, this actually makes sense. And holy crap, I think I actually want to do it. It was something I
See-
started to mull over in December.
It's an interesting mind shift because you go from self accolade to group accolade.
It is, but
You know,
I've spent.
you-
But here's the thing, Jason. I've spent so many years as a scout leader. I've spent a decade as a scout leader, and that's all about doing work so that the scouts get glory.
Yes.
So for
Yeah,
me,
exactly.
that's a very natural mindset. And as a team lead, because I've been our team's team lead for a couple of years, I've always really enjoyed the mentoring and development part of that role. So this is like the manager role is that like up at 11. I have to get to turn that to 11. Now,
Yep, exactly.
will I have to do paperwork? Sure, I'll have to do paperwork. But you know what? A lot of that paperwork is about like taking care of my guys. Like, here's
Yeah.
more money. I had to, let me help you get promoted. Will I possibly have people who do stupid things? We need to have difficult conversations. Not to the level of when I was a manager last time. I was a manager for a mail order computer company tech support group where people were not nearly as mature and professional as they are at Red Hat. I had to fire some people who couldn't show up to work on time. One guy, hand to heart. I had to fire him, and I had known him from college, by the way, and helped get him hired. He thought it was a good idea to put a lot of Japanese anime porn on the departmental server. He thought that was a great place to plop it.
That's a great idea.
And that was like one of the lowest days in my professional career, having to punt Steve for deciding that was a good idea.
That's got to be an awkward conversation. Hey, you know that?
Oh, it was awkward.
You know that flat out like porn you put on the company equipment?
It wasn't even real porn. It was cartoon porn.
Yeah, right. It's even worse.
Like, yeah. Oh my God. But it's definitely a mind shift for sure. But all of my customers know now, so I can be public about it, because I didn't want my customers to find out that their TAM was now a manager because of Facebook or LinkedIn or the Iron Sysadmin. But it's good. I'm enjoying the new role.
Cool. Well, I've already
Yeah.
said I've already
Nate,
said congrats.
Stop leaking information on Iron Sysadmin.
Yeah, it's terrible.
He's not.
I've already said congrats,
Yes,
but
congrats.
congrats, Mark.
Thanks.
Yeah. I hope it treats you well.
Thank you. I just hope I don't bring dishonor onto my house,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
pretty
Because
happy.
then they got to get one of those batlets and cut
Don't-
off your head or something.
Don't load the department server up with anime porn.
Yeah,
I think you'll
don't.
be okay.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. But that's great advice.
If I find anime porn on
I
the
tried.
shell server
I
or
tried.
something, I'll know where to look.
Private browser windows, people. Private browser windows. Anyway,
Private browser windows in a corporate world are not private. Good luck.
Yeah.
I'm actually not even well, okay. If I were to be looking at porn, which I don't, just reasons.
It wouldn't be anime porn.
I would never do that at my job.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, okay. That, right.
All right.
But
Well, it's good to know.
anyway,
We've learned something about
let's
Mark
switch.
tonight.
Let's
Uncle
go to the next bullet point.
Yeah.
Uncle Mark is a Disney guy.
All right. So on that note, Jason, you got some stuff in here. What do you got going on?
I play video games.
Good. That's a good thing.
It's mostly just video game stuff, honestly. I've been playing a lot of Valhalla, because I'm a Viking, like literally.
Yes, you are.
Yes, I am. That's my heritage. So I've been thoroughly enjoying that. I was super excited when I heard it was coming out, and I've been excited playing it. It's been a lot of fun. So
I've played it a little bit, but I got distracted by Horizon, I think. I never got to the story around the story. Is there one of those like that happens in the modern world? Like
oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
they continue that.
Yeah, it's I mean, Assassin's Creed games are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, I've put like 60 hours into this thing already, and I can honestly say I'm not even sure I'm a quarter of the way through. Like, it's huge, it's humongous,
Black Flag
but it's
was
fun.
spectacular. I loved Black
Oh
Flag.
yeah, it was. Yeah, I just I like the whole Norse mythology.
I don't think I've ever played an Assassin's
the
Creed
side
game. I don't think I've ever
the
touched
side
it.
game in this one is a dice game called Orlog, which unfortunately is not a real thing. It was something they made up and not actually a Viking game. But it's actually a lot of fun. So it's something that I would probably play in reality too. But it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it. So the mechanics are pretty good. I don't know that I have a lot of negatives about. My biggest negative about the game is that I play, and so Xbox has this sleep mode, if you will, where you can kind of quick resume the games you're playing, and without fail, Valhalla. This is the only game I've seen this with, by the way. Every time I come back to Valhalla, I can start playing, and within a minute or so, it'll pop up and say, "I can't save your game. Please restart." And if you don't do anything, like it can't save all of a sudden. So you have to like the quick resume, which is a really nice feature, doesn't really work with Valhalla.
Ew.
Yeah, that does suck. And I don't, I looked up some stuff and there's other people complaining about it, and I didn't really see effects. So I've been playing that.
Hopefully they'll address that.
Tomorrow, Wonderlands comes out. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
No.
The Borderlands game.
Tiny
I
Tina.
am stoked for this game to come out. It looks so fun and so hilarious. So I'm very excited. Yes, tomorrow is the release date.
And Tiny Tina, by the way, same voice actress as Aloy from the Horizon series.
Sure.
I don't know. A state. That's
Maybe.
truth.
Okay. Yeah.
Ashley Birch.
Yes, I the whole character behind Tiny Tina and the whole mythos that they've created is just fantastic, and I just love it, and I can't wait to play this game.
Borderlands 2, when Tiny Tina hopped out, that was like a friggin' amazing subquest.
The assault on Dragon Keep.
Well, then they did the D&D, the DLC
based
around.
Yep, Assault on Dragon Keep. Yep.
Yeah, but in the base game, even her quest line in the base game.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God. Blowing
the Badonkadonks. Yes.
The Badonkadonks. Yeah. She's a great lover. Love Tiny.
Yes. Her character is so awesome. So yeah, she's got her own game coming out, which is going to be spectacular. And the other thing I just picked up that I played the demo, and so the game is Final Fantasy Origins Stranger in Paradise, or Stranger of Paradise, what the proper name is. Anyway, it's kind of it's almost like a hack and slash with the RPG elements in it. It's a lot of fun, and I was playing the demo, and I've got this like crazy deja vu. Like, I swear I have played this game like 2 or 3 years ago. And I just like, I can't place it. I feel like, because I remember the boss, I remember kind of the story. I from the demo, I didn't play anything beyond that. So I'm just wondering if there was like, I don't know if it was previewed years ago and I saw it or what, but it looks pretty good. So I've got that, and that's sort of in the queue. And then sitting in the queue that I need to come back to is the latest that's the name of the game. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, there's another game that I have that's kind of a little bit bug ridden that I'm waiting for some patches to come through, hopefully to fix it up, and maybe get back to it. And then there's Cyberpunk, which I would love to get to, but I'm afraid to spend money on it because it's just, there's so many negative stories about it and how bug ridden it is.
It had a terrible launch. I don't know if it's still the same case.
It did. It
had a terrible launch on console. I played it on PC, and while I ran into a couple of bugs, most of them were easily resolved by reloading from a last save, and it saves very often, so I never really lost
Yeah.
significant progress. It was not without its issues, and there has been a lot of patching. It was on sale for half price on the PS5 probably over a month ago, so I grabbed it because the next generation PS5 native client was available, and I fired it up and played it for a little bit, and it was running really well. It looked good, it performed well.
Yeah.
Now, some people have issues with the content in it itself, because I think there were some nerds who thought they were going to role play living in, Night City 24/7. I don't know what they expected out of the game, but it was never meant to like be your own private metaverse that you could just live virtually in. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of what I think some people wanted, and that's not the game. It's like
Yeah.
it's the Witcher mechanic sort of in a
Right.
cyberpunk world. You're following quest
Yeah.
lines, and you've got side quests, and you've got other
Yeah,
things.
which is exactly what I'm expecting. It just
Yeah.
my concern is the number of videos and reviews that I saw where like the characters are floating above the things they're supposed to be in, or like the
Yeah.
faces blow apart, or like just really weird stuff that just shouldn't be happening in the game. And
I never saw. I didn't see that happen too much on PC. I think that it should never have been released on the PS4 and whatever the Xbox of that generation was. They should have
Xbox One
gone-
X, yeah.
Yeah, they should have just gone with the next generation, the current generation we have now.
Yeah.
And if you have a good gaming PC, I would say it's perfectly safe. And if you have a modern Xbox, because it sounds like you're an Xbox guy, it would be safe from a bug and performance perspective.
I
And
played
I
it.
will tell you, melting people's brains by doing that heat their head up hack is hella fun.
I'm sure it is.
Lots of enemies without them even seeing me.
So Watch Dogs is the other game I was talking about, and I love it, and it's great, and it's a lot of fun. It's got a save game bug where it doesn't always save. So I had put like a dozen hours into it. Yeah, I put like a dozen hours into it and came back in the game, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait. What happened to all of the things that I did? I lost like 3 or 4 hours of gameplay.
And that's just a kick in the balls when that happens.
Yes, it
is.
Like, you feel deflated.
Yeah, so I kind of found a workaround that works like 90% of the time, but it's still frustrating. So I'm hoping they fix that.
Yeah, the hell with that.
Yeah, right.
But speaking of The Witcher, there's a new Witcher game in production apparently.
I saw that.
And it was funny because they said yes, the new Witcher game, it's instead of a wolf, this medallion is of a cat, and which was quickly commented on by like the internet that said, yeah, that's not a cat, that's a lynx. But yes,
Isn't that a kind of cat?
Sure.
well,
it's just
I
like
mean,
a cat.
yes, but there's cat that sits, and does nothing all day long in your house. And there's lynx that, I'd actually be scared of meeting in the
It's
woods.
like,
So
like a
I've
killer
known some
animal.
Cats that I'm scared of.
Yeah. Yeah, I've met some cats to be scared of.
Yeah, no, that's kind
so
of cool. We'll see what happens.
that's been the highlight of everything, is just sort of playing video games. Other than that, it's been work and trying to just chill because, life.
Yeah.
And just being sort of like watching the world and going, yeah, Meteor, please, right now. Thanks.
No, I need to finish Elden Ring, dude.
Yeah, no, we can't have
Okay.
a
meteor.
Well, it's not like it's going to appear and kill us in one day. You'll have a couple days. And
Well-
nobody's going to be bothering you for work during those couple days. So
They'll be running around like maniacs. You can be
Yes.
at home playing Elden Ring until the servers go down.
and hopefully the sysadmins did their job and the automation is working and
Yeah.
the electricity stays on.
Yeah.
Hey, if there's a giant meteor, Bruce Willis and his drill team will save us.
Oh,
That's
yes,
what we
that's right. They will. God, what
Yes.
a movie.
Yes.
What a freaking movie.
It's
All
one
right.
of my guilty pleasures. I'm not even ashamed to admit that.
That
Or-
was that one
or-
Armageddon? No, that was
Yeah, that was Armageddon.
Armageddon was Bruce Willis and Aerosmith.
And
There was
Aerosmith.
also
And Liv
Deep
Tyler.
Impact,
Yep.
which was not nearly as over the top.
Yeah,
because
Deep
Armageddon
Impact
was
was the other
Michael
one.
Bay. Like Michael Bay, who just it just turned all the turned everything up to 11, and
Yeah,
it's so cheesy, but to me that's like its awesome appeal.
That Deep
Yeah,
Impact and Armageddon, and there was a third one I think that was like a B-list movie, came out all in the same summer. It was like the summer of meteor movies.
Right.
And
Yeah, except that
specifically asteroids.
like time has moved on, and it's not going to be Deep Impact or Armageddon. It's going to be more like Don't Look Up. And if you haven't seen that, go watch it. It's hilarious. Don't worry, the president survives.
That's a shame.
Sort of. Briefly.
I keep meaning to watch that.
Don't Look Up.
Yeah. Watch after the credits.
Okay.
It's one of those. Stay till
Well,
after the credits.
Marvel movies have
Yes.
taught me that.
Yeah.
Yes, watch after the credits. Also, I saw Ghostbusters Afterlife this week, and it was amazing, and I loved everything about it. And there was a mid-credit and an after-credit, and it was awesome. And I really hope there's more.
I thought it was good too.
Good, wasn't it?
I know
It was. It was a slow build, but it was really, really good.
a lot.
And I'm sorry, like I cried at the end.
Yeah,
I did,
me too.
because it was just like it was
Yeah.
moving.
Yep.
I don't judge you for that.
Yeah, I thought it was a good movie. Any movie that can choke me up is a good movie. Freaking Encanto choked me up.
Well, Encanto's fantastic.
Kind of a deep movie, but yeah, it's. I thought
I know.
Ghostbusters Afterlife was a pretty good movie. I forget if I watched through the credits.
It was.
I think I did.
Yeah, I mean, my wife's comment was like, "Oh, we've seen all this before," but it was like, "Yes, but it fits right in, and it's like it works."
It was a natural
Yes.
progression.
It was. It
wasn't-
was good.
Yeah, it was.
It was a really great. Like, if they were to pick up the franchise again and continue the story of the Ghostbusters, they could now. Like, that movie was good enough to set it up for this is the next generation
Yes.
of the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like I said, I hope it continues because it was phenomenal.
Yeah. I thought it was good. I liked it.
And if you've seen the movie, you know that there's another one in 2131. So, just got to wait a little while, another 100 years or so.
Just gotta
It'll be
wait.
good.
Just gotta wait.
Oh Lord.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
post-credit scenes, man. Can you believe when me and my son went to see No Way Home, there were people who left the theater before the projector shut off.
I mean, that's a
Like,
Marvel
never
movie.
been
You
to a
don't do
Marvel
that.
yeah, you don't do that
Yeah.
for Marvel movies.
You don't get up until the projector shuts down and the lights come up.
Yeah.
That's how you know they're done with post-credit scenes.
Yeah.
And the
You don't get
best
up until
one
the
was
guy's
the last
cleaning
one.
and says, "Get out."
Please
Right.
leave. But there might be another one.
Because there was one very fast, and some people left before that because they're complete fucking idiots. But there was one that
And
there
there
was
goes
a
the
quick
explicit
one, and then
tag.
half the people stuck it up. I'm like, and I said it out loud. Have these people never seen a Marvel movie? Where are they going? There's going to be another one at least. There might be
Yep.
2 more.
Obviously,
I have
they
not
don't-
seen
they
No
don't
Way
care.
Home yet.
No Way Home is amazing.
Well, there's apparently
Is it?
6 credit
I
scenes,
was-
so you have to stay to the end.
I don't think. there's
Well,
6, but
I mean,
more than
we would
one.
watch it. We could just stream it. I'll just watch it multiple times until I see them all.
So,
Yeah, I the previous one was good, so I have high hopes for it, but I just haven't seen it yet.
We're running late, aren't we?
well, it's been an hour. We haven't even touched the news yet. Should we talk about the news? Should we move on into the news?
I don't
Because
know.
that might
Is
be
there anything?
I mean, we can. There's news.
that might maybe be what people are waiting for, if they're even still waiting.
Ah, nobody wants to hear about the news.
Anybody, if you're still waiting, thank you. Thank you for waiting. All right, let me find the button,
Push the button, Frank.
and we're going to go on to the news. So somehow I still have some beer left, and we're starting the news.
Well-
not much beer, a little bit.
Well, A.O. Null commented about the meteor, so
Yeah.
somebody there.
He's
Hello.
waiting. Yeah, it's because he's waiting for the show to end by us getting hit by a meteor. I mean, a meteor could at least take
Maybe.
out 2 of us, maybe all 3 of us. I don't know. It'd be a pretty big meteor if it took out all 3 of us. Just saying. Anyway, let's talk about the news. All right, so Let's see, Jason, you put in a link here to a news article about the Okta breach that we touched on earlier. You wanna summarize? Because you added it like as we're going live, I think. So I hadn't even looked at it.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of mentioned this a little bit. So there's this new hacking group that I say they're new. I haven't really heard of them before. These are the guys we talked about before that had attacked Microsoft and released a bunch of source code. They also attacked Okta. And it was interesting because, there was they came out and they're like, hey, we popped Okta. And here's a bunch of proof on how we popped Okta. Okta being a probably one of the biggest OAuth authentication providers out there.
Oh, now I remember who Okta is. This whole time I'm like, I'm waiting for some context that will remind me who Okta is. Now I know who Okta is.
Yes. Yes. So Lapsus came out and they were like, haha, we popped them. Here's a bunch of proof. And Okta went,
No,
that didn't happen. We told you didn't do that. Nothing like that happened.
This reminds me.
And then it changed into like, okay, fine, you got access, but it totally wasn't us. It was just like you cracked a couple accounts. And since every day it seems to be increasing and increasing on what actually happened. So if you believe what's out there now, it appears that Lapsus compromised a third-party partner of Okta to the tune of a couple hundred clients, but it's no big deal. So this really only affects you if you're an Okta customer that's using their SaaS service. Otherwise, this has nothing to do with the on-prem installations you may have.
So was Okta in fact not lying and they were not popped, but just their third party was? So in technicality they were?
So this particular article is interesting because it's like Okta concedes hundreds of clients could be affected by breach.
Could be.
So they're still playing the well, maybe. And we're talking this is something that happened back in January. So this has just sort of come to light in the past week or so. So it's I don't know. But Okta is saying that like, only 2.5% of our customers might have been impacted.
Those 2.5,
they're
they're the least important customers too. Don't worry about it. It's totally not.
I guess. So Lapsus is interesting because they're a hacking group who has done some attacks, and then in the aftermath of the attack have continued to ridicule and make fun of the people that they've attacked, to the tune of apparently Lapsus members have joined the Zoom conference calls of several impacted customers of the Okta breach to make fun of them during the conference call.
Oh man.
Insult to injury.
Yeah, they're
what's that? You're not compromised?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me prove it.
Right. and now I don't have an article here, but I just heard this today that supposedly they know who some of the Lapsus members are. They went after some kid in the the UK, and
if they're joining the conference calls, this sounds like it might be traceable.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how true it is. There's been a lot of like sort of, maybe it's them, but there's strong evidence that maybe it's not them, and so it's kind of going back and forth. So we'll see what happens.
Fun.
But yeah. So Okta got popped, maybe, sort of, allegedly. And if you are using Okta's SaaS service, maybe change your passwords.
Maybe change your passwords. You know what? Change your passwords anyway. If you have like even the slightest inclination that maybe you're impacted, change your password. It's not going to hurt.
Yeah. Use a password manager. And if you suspect, right, password manager, two-factor authentication. And if you have the slightest suspicion that maybe a password might be compromised, change your password because you're using a password manager. You don't know what it is anyway.
You know what? It's Tuesday. Change your password. It's not Tuesday. It's Thursday. It's Thursday. Change your password.
I'm not. I mean, I'm not a big advocate for forced password changes. Like, I hate the systems that are like,
Yeah,
3 months
no,
have passed.
but
Change your
it's
password.
also
Like, I haven't logged in 12. You know.
it's also like the bare minimum simple. Like, is there even the slightest suspicion? Change your password. It's not
Right.
that big of a deal. Yes, you have to update your password on whatever's using it, but big deal. Change your password.
Yeah, but again, if you're using a password manager, your password should be unique for the system that you're logging into, and it shouldn't impact your other ones. So it shouldn't actually matter if you have to change it. Who cares? I mean, it sort of becomes an impact when you're dealing with something like email passwords and you have like clients across 20 different machines. But other than that, who cares? So. And Nate is currently being DOS attacked by a small child in what appeared to be pink garb.
Two of them. One of them didn't come in the room though.
Two? Oh, there were two?
Yeah, there were two.
I didn't see two. Okay.
Two. There were two. They want me to put them to
That
bed.
was a DDoS attack then.
Yeah, yes. Anyway. Right. So the next one we got is from Bloomberg, and I'm sorry, some people seem to get a paywall when they hit Bloomberg. I got a paywall after I hit the article for the second time, I think. It's like the theme of tonight's news.
What?
The theme of tonight's news is try to get around
ft.io.
the paywall. So anyway, this article is about, I guess you could call this leaked information because there's nothing official from Apple about it yet, and even the people that supposedly are from Apple that talked about it said they can't be named because this isn't public information yet. So take it for what it's worth. But apparently Apple is planning, maybe, a subscription service for hardware, right? And I mean, they talk a lot about the iPhone in this specifically, but it could be for things like laptops and tablets and stuff too. But the iPhone, face it, is the biggest seller for Apple. In fact, they even have a graph in here that says 52.5% of sales for Apple are iPhones. But anyway, the whole point of the service is that instead of throwing down a lump of money every year, in some people's cases, or a couple years, like in Uncle Mark's case and my own case, for a new phone, you pay a monthly subscription. And then when the new phone comes out, you have an option to be like, I want the new phone. I suppose you give back your old phone and you get the new phone. And instead of having your old phone sitting in a desk drawer or in a landfill somewhere, it gets presumably recycled or maybe repurposed, refurbished and sold as a used phone. I don't know. And then you get a new phone. Because, face it, there are some Apple people. In fact, there's some electronics people, some gadget people, who the second the new device comes out, they have to have it, right? So this may be designed for those folks. I gotta say, I have mixed feelings about the concept, right? Personally, I'm big on device ownership. I'm big on right to repair. Obviously, the iPhone is not the device that you're going to be pulling apart and repairing unless you have a lot of confidence in that era or that field. I have done it. It's a nightmare. But to me, it's more of a matter of principle, right? Like, if I have a device, I want to be able to just say, I want to buy the device outright and buy it and have it and do what I want with it, right? And this is pretty much the complete opposite of that. It's more like leasing a phone, if you really want to put it that way, right? And I don't lease cars. I don't like the concept of leasing cars. Again, that's me. I feel like it's a bad financial choice. But again, that's me. Some people think it's the best way to own a car ever. This kind of brings that into the device space, and I'm sure they're not the only vendor that's doing this sort of thing. I know there are some car manufacturers that do something similar, where not just for leasing, but like, I think it was Tesla has this model, where you buy a car, all the cars are the same. The feature set is, they're basically activation keys, right? Like you say, yes, I would like air conditioning. Yes, I would like a GPS. Yes, I would like Bluetooth. And you pay for those things monthly, and they're activated. Right? And then you can upgrade later or downgrade or whatever, right? That's not quite exactly what this is, but the concept is the same. And I don't love it in the automotive space either, but I also understand why some people might, right? Because there's people that own cars much differently than I do. I own a car because I'm a little bit of an enthusiast, and I tinker with them and I fix them myself. Not everybody's into that, right? So, anyway, I both love and hate this concept. You guys have any thoughts on it? I know you're both iPhone people.
So I do lease my current Volkswagen Atlas, and I did lease my Jeep Hercules Mulligan, but ended up buying him because I just love the car.
Hercules Mulligan.
Um,
I don't even want to know how it got that name.
it's from It's from a Hamilton phase because Hercules Mulligan is a badass in the Hamilton musical. But I mean, the phone thing, I don't know. I I guess I could have a strong reaction to it. What I end up doing, like I said before the show, and I think you kind of pointed it out, is I'll buy I'll Red Hat gives us a certain amount of money to put down on a phone or towards the hardware, so I'll use that as a down payment, and then I'll do installments through the life, and I eventually own the phone. And I am not one of those people who goes to the Apple Store on the morning of a new product release because I just don't care that much about the phone.
Yeah.
Like I don't need it to be
Yeah.
the newest model. What happened is the last time I had a 10, I owned it for a while. Then my daughter's, she had a really old one. It died, so I gave her my 10, and now I'm paying on an 11 something, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'll probably once I'm done paying it off, I'll keep it until I need to buy a new one.
Well,
I
I mean,
don't feel the need to chase.
the very reason I
So,
have an iPhone at the moment is because I treated my wife to an upgrade and I took her old one, a perfectly good iPhone 12.
Yeah.
Right? It's purple.
So-
but whatever. I put a case on it. It's not purple anymore.
So
Um,
is the Apple program, and maybe you said this, do you have an option to buy it at the end, or you have to turn it in?
Again,
don't
this
know that
is-
It's purple on the inside.
It's purple on the inside. Again, this is all like basically unconfirmed insider info that doesn't have a lot of details. I read the whole article, and unless I missed it, it didn't really go into details about those sort of specifics. Do you have to trade the phone in? Do you get to keep it? None of that is really outlined. I imagine that the program will work something like you pay monthly, they give you a phone, you use it, and then when you want a new one, you give that one back and get a different one, right? Maybe I'm wrong. It could be that you are building equity in that phone and you can buy it out at the end, kind of like a lease. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, but
Yeah, A.O. Null in the chat asks a good question. Like, is it ownership or are you leasing it? And it like the article, the way I read it, sounded like it was ownership. But yeah, ownership is weird if you're not paying the full price.
yeah.
for it.
So
And
if
paying the
you're
subscription,
if you're going to trade this thing in after a year, right, or if you're going to get a new device at the end of a year, that means that the $1,000 price tag on a phone, if you bought that model or if you opted for that model, is going to be a significant amount of money. And in which case, why do they even have this program? You could just get it through your carrier and make that payment and have it at the end, right? So I don't know, because they've already got programs to finance. I don't know if folks are seeing me on the stream here, but something has just gone odd with the internet connection. Yeah, I think there was totally a meteor, AO. That or Riverside has puked because I can't get back into Riverside. Hang on a second here. All right, folks, I'm going to take us to a waiting page, see if I can figure out, if you're even hearing me, if I can get the show spun back up. And if not, we may have to call it a night. So we'll be back.
Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you.
totally not.
And so that's why the reactor blew up, and that was the end of the story. So good job, guys, on fixing that.
Ay, ay, ay.
All right. Totally nothing. Nothing happened there.
Look, we're gonna have company.
Everything is normal. You didn't see anything. Right. So Apple is going to do this
Nothing
thing
to see here. Move along.
where they're going to charge people monthly to get new devices, and we had thoughts about that, and all those thoughts totally were not interrupted by some weird internet interruption.
I think I'm kind of in the same camp as Mark, where I mean I do a payment plan thingy now through my phone company, which I mean there's I could do the same thing through Apple or some other phone company. It depends on what the new features of the phone are. So I had the 10s, and the 11 didn't interest me, and the 12 didn't interest me, and the 13 finally came out, and I was like, well, I mean, my phone's pretty old. There's some new features here that are mildly interesting. Okay, fine, I'll jump to those. But there was no major push to move there. And in the meantime, I paid off the phone and owned it, so I didn't have to pay for the phone for, I don't know, like almost a year, maybe a little less.
Yeah, I think that's
13. So
that's kind of my thing, right? Like, whether you choose to buy the phone outright or choose a payment plan, there's a light at the end of that tunnel where that disappears from your budget and you have the phone. Now, some people don't treat their devices that way. Some people are continuously paying on their device anyway because they can't stand to not have the latest, or at least maybe the second latest, right? So, some people will skip versions. They go from the 11 to the 13, the 13 to the 15, for example. But they're always paying for the phone. And if that's the way you want to live your life, then that's completely up to you. And maybe this plan would be perfect for you if that's the way you do it.
That's what it sounds like. It's for like a cultist, the one who's chasing.
Well,
the cult of Apple folks.
I guess my question would be, where, like, what happens if I break the phone? How many times can I break the phone?
Yeah.
So I have insurance, or whatever the hell you want to call it.
There's probably an insurance
on my
policy
phone
that
now,
covers it, if I had
right?
to guess.
So, but the problem is that if I, depending on what is wrong with the phone, it could cost me anything from $0 to a couple $100 to fix the phone.
Right.
Even though I have insurance on it.
Right.
Which may or may not be cheaper.
And again, that's
so,
true if you're paying on the phone too, though. And maybe this includes some kind of an
yeah,
insurance
no,
thing,
that's what I have today when I'm paying on the phone.
Right.
So, and even when the phone is paid off, the insurance is through the telephone carrier. So it carries on all of our devices across the entire plan, whether they're new or old. But in the case of a subscription, if I break the phone, does it get replaced? Like there's this weird area where it's like, I may have a phone that I have on a subscription that I've had for a year or 2 years past the end of life or whatever, since the new one came out. How does that work when I break the phone? Do I just get a new one? Do I, what do I gain? What do I lose? So there's lots of questions before I would even consider doing something like this.
And again, all of this info is basically leaked, right? So it may look completely different the day it ever comes out, and maybe it never will.
None of it's contractual.
Yeah, right. So, at any rate, I mean, I could go on financially about what I think is the right way to go here, but well, whatever. Everyone has their own opinions on that. So, all right. So our next article is, I think it's really, really ironic, but it's from the Associated Press, I think, and that's mainly because the article I initially found was on a site that had a paywall. That's the theme for tonight's podcast, paywall, and I had to find a different article. But anyway, Uber. I don't know if you guys know this, Jason. I know you know this because you told me about this. I think it was the first time I heard about it. But Uber and Lyft, I suppose, and taxi drivers tend to be at odds with each other because they're essentially competitors. And taxi companies, they sort of had this idea that this was their space, and Uber and Lyft came in and disrupted that space. And there was a lot of tension there. Well, apparently,
it goes beyond that because taxi drivers pay for their medallions
Oh, right.
to the tune of like a lot of money. Like some of those medallions are worth like tens or hundreds or even $1 million, and
Yeah.
that's, you know, to have a group of people come in and be like, yeah, so we're gonna do the same thing you do, and anybody can do it. They just have to push a button on their phone. It's
Right.
like, well, but this is my livelihood.
But why did I invest all of this time and money into becoming a
Yeah,
taxi cab
exactly.
driver? Right, right. And really, it's just another case of how technology has disrupted yet another industry. Who expected taxi cabs to be disrupted by Uber and Lyft? However, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I don't know
Yeah,
enough about how taxis, like what the
yeah.
rules and
Like
regulations
what?
and everything else are there, but
Yeah, what
Here's what I can
is?
tell. So, as a consumer, as someone who actually travels to New York periodically,
Yeah,
what I can tell you is Uber's super convenient because you don't have to do the taxi hailing dance.
yeah,
yep, exactly.
If you're at a known easy location that tends to have taxis lurking, taxis tend to be significantly cheaper. It is sometimes 2 to 3 times more expensive to take an Uber for the same distance.
Yep.
So where a taxi drive might cost you $8, an Uber can cost you anywhere from, you know, 16 to $24 for the
Right.
exact same trip.
yeah. And essentially the same service.
It can be a pain. It can be a pain in the ass to hail a cab,
Yeah,
depending on where you are.
right.
Yeah, it's absolutely a convenience thing, and the control over your ride. I need an Uber. All right, they're gonna be here in 5 minutes. I got 5 minutes to screw around, and in 5 minutes, I know when I walk
You're
outside,
gonna have an
because I
Uber.
can see his dot on the screen,
Yeah,
Uber's gonna be sitting out there.
yeah.
You know, meanwhile, you know, otherwise it's like, you know, it's pouring rain. And you're like, hello, I'm soaking wet.
Can I
taxi,
please get on your taxi? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point of the article here is that so Uber, I think mainly this is because of the pandemic. The article doesn't call it out directly, but it really hints that this is because of the pandemic. There was a shift in how Uber's being used. There's less ride sharing being done on Uber and a lot more Uber Eats being ordered because a lot more people are at home, need food, right? And in the city, right, where maybe you can't just go out because you've been asked to shelter in place, you call an Uber to get food instead of calling an Uber to go to your friend's place or go to work or whatever you're using an Uber for, right? So like the demand for Uber has shifted, and the amount of drivers available apparently has dropped. Maybe that's pandemic related. Maybe it's job. I don't know what caused that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm buying that because New York has been easing up on restrictions for months.
Yeah. Well,
And
yeah, right.
Their mask mandate is now
Sure.
gone.
Now, but for the
Right.
past
But-
2 years, right?
But
It
that's
hasn't.
that's been something but they've been easing up on restrictions for a while yet.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but there's
they slowed the easing with Omicron, but this is strange ass timing for this alliance to be happening now.
It is.
there's
It
also
is.
been, I mean, since Uber started in New York, there's been all out war between Uber and the taxis and in New York State itself on the, you know, sort of kind of trying to figure out like, well, taxis are licensed and regulated and we make money off of it and Uber isn't, and how do we deal with that? So you know, yes, I think the pandemic helped some of this, with you know, reducing the number of drivers, increasing the amount of driving that needs to be done, and Uber Eats and everything else. But I think a lot of this is very much a political move as well, whether
Some of
like,
it's
well,
Yeah.
you know, we have a way out.
So we still haven't covered the actual headline, which is, in case you haven't gathered,
Oh yeah,
that Uber is now teaming up with the New York City taxi cabs to provide rides, right? So if you call an Uber, I suppose you may end up with a taxi. Now, I don't know if that means it's the same price. I don't know if that means, because Mark, you were saying there's a price difference.
It's a huge difference. You know what? I'm going to bet that a lot of people who would have Ubered as gas prices go up, that makes it a less appealing thing to do because Uber doesn't help cover your costs at all.
oh no,
I would never even consider being an Uber driver,
Right.
even if I didn't have my current salary, because you beat the shit out of your car.
Yep. You're putting
And-
a lot of extra miles on your vehicle, and they're not like. I guess they expect you to just eat that. I don't know. I
They
don't know exactly how
absolutely
that
expect
works.
you to eat it. Well, they count on people being stupid and not understanding that wear and tear is actually an expense.
Yeah. Right.
And now with gas going up again significantly, that's easy even for a dumb person to realize. Gee, it cost me $20 to fill my tank last time. Now it costs me 35 or
Right.
whatever the delta is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Uber doesn't adjust anything, so you're literally making less money. So that probably isn't helping. I feel like Uber has honestly been beat up a little bit in the past year anyway,
Yeah.
and you probably don't have the same number of people doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would
Right.
agree. I mean, I don't know if it's the same quote unquote labor shortage that everyone's complaining of, but I mean, it could be, right? And again, I don't know the specifics on what's behind all of that. I'm not trying to stir some pot because I know people have opinions, but yeah, it is what it is, right? Uber's hurting, and now they're leaning on the taxi service. You're right. It could be a
Pot Boy's
political
like,
thing.
Stir me, Nate. I'm Pot Boy. I'm your friend.
Stir the pot.
But
Okay.
I think part of it is also that gig workers are, the general gig economy is realizing like this is cool and wonderful for like one-off stuff, but you can't live on this because there's
Right.
no you're not a permanent employee. You're not
Mhm.
technically an employee to begin with. You're just a contractor. You've got no benefits. You've got
Yeah,
no rights.
right, right.
And
So it's a
and-
great
and
like
that way-
temporary
yeah.
thing, or like I need a couple extra bucks now. I'll do some Uber for a couple weeks, right? Yeah.
So
yeah,
Has-
and companies. I mean, this is sort of tangent wise, but like companies just don't. A lot of companies don't seem to understand what consultant means, and some people are figuring out like what consultant means. Like consultant means like you work on your own time. Period. Like
Yeah.
unless you have some written agreement with the company that says
Yep.
you're going to be there for certain hours, like you're on your own time. And if the company doesn't understand that, that's their own damn problem because hopefully you've written your contract in such a way that if the company doesn't like that, they can fire you, but they still have to pay the contract.
Yeah.
So you're like, and some of the laws are changing too, where, they're realizing like companies are using contractors because they can abuse the hell out of them because contractors aren't employees. They don't have like as far as I understand it, like there's kind of no HR for a consultant. Now you can be taken to HR as a consultant for doing something against an employee, but if an employee does something against you, not a whole lot you can do about it.
Right.
So it's this weird relationship, and gig workers, which are all contractors, are going, I'm constantly getting the short end of the stick. This is not cool. Let me look for something different. And they're starting to do that.
Yep. You can only take advantage of your workers for so long, and then they start to figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought that was a nice, ironic thing. It was tech related. I thought it'd be fun to talk about. I know you had opinions, Jason. I know you I think it was you told me you saw this firsthand, like taxi cab drivers getting physically violent with their Uber counterparts.
I
it
didn't
you?
see the physical violence. So in Puerto Rico, we had several Uber drivers who asked
right.
us to meet them,
Yeah.
down the street or around
Like
the
it was
corner.
like it was a
because-
drug deal.
yeah.
Can you meet me in this dark alley? Because
Yeah,
the taxi
because-
drivers might try to kill me.
Yeah, because the taxi drivers were like they were smashing windows and hitting them and everything else.
Yeah.
I've heard similar things in New York. I've never seen it visibly, but I've seen some of the results of it. So yeah, and the New York thing was interesting, like to see this happen because there is a yellow cab app. I have no idea what it does. I never installed it because Uber was there and it was easy.
You use
But
Uber.
there's actually a yellow cab. Well, I mean, the couple times I was in a cab because it happened to be there's an app that's associated with it that the way that it was advertised or marketed made it sound like it was, Uber, but for taxis. But I don't,
Yeah.
maybe it's not. I don't know. I've never really messed with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I think we've beaten that one up enough. I just accidentally closed the next article on my screen, although I don't really need to open it, except to say that it's from phys.org. And this article kind of blew my mind until I actually thought about it. And we had a conversation during the break about it with Jason and Mark, who apparently weren't as blown away as I was. But so first, I'm going to lead it up with you guys know there's a Perseverance rover. I'm assuming you know there's a Perseverance rover. Rover. I keep saying rover. Rover with a B. It's not. It's rover. Rover, as it roves places. Anyway, it's it's on Mars. It's been there for like a year or so. What I did not know about the Perseverance rover is that it's got a microphone, so we can now hear Mars, which I thought was kind of neat, right? And there's sound clips on the Perseverance rover's website. There's a link for it in the article on phys.org. Anyway, so you can listen to like the wind on Mars. You can hear what it sounds like when the rover drives around and stuff like that. Neat,
Does
right?
the rover paint with all the colors of the wind?
It may.
And for those that haven't picked up on it yet, fizz as in physics, not fizz as in like the fizz of a beer.
It's the fizz of a beer. Now you're ruining it for me. I thought this was a beer site. This is a physics site?
No.
I had no idea.
Yeah, physics, not
physics,
beer.
Physics. Phys.org is just a physics site. So,
Although the physics of beer is pretty cool.
one of the things that this rover is doing, and this sounds incredibly irresponsible for being a visitor on another planet, but it's shooting rocks with lasers. Apparently, it's got lasers on it that can vaporize rocks, which is also awesome. We can remotely vaporize rocks.
It's a rover. It's
And
a
we
rover
can-
with freaking laser beams.
We can hear it happening. Which this article is full of like awesome revelations for me. But the really cool one is that the speed of sound on Mars is different than it is on Earth. And to me, I never thought about what the speed of sound was, even because it's sound is what it is, right? To me, because I've only ever lived on Earth, like everybody else listening, theoretically, except for maybe the Perseverance rover, if he listens to presuming the gender of the rover, maybe it's a she.
It's a robot. It doesn't have
It's a robot. There's no gender on the robot. Okay, so anyway, well, I don't want to presume that the robot is a male. So anyway, the rover up there shooting rocks and recording sound from it, they were able to calculate the speed of sound on Mars. And not only is it different on Mars, which I thought, again, it blew my mind. I thought that was a constant. It's not a constant. It's not even a constant here on Earth, apparently, because Jason looked this up while on the break. Like the speed of sound underwater is faster. Imagine that. The speed of sound varies by temperature. But anyway, not only is it different on Mars because of all these various things, it also changes based on the frequency of sound. So, like the tone of your sound, like the tone of your voice, for example, or perhaps the frequency of like a radio wave, will travel at different speeds based on the frequency of that sound on Mars, which, again, I thought this was crazy. And they said that this could actually pose a problem for communications on Mars, presuming that we had, like, communication stations on Mars for some reason, looking into the future when maybe there's, several rovers talking to each other or something.
I'm of the opinion that removing your helmet is going to prove more problematic to communications than the sound speed.
You are right about that, and that is what we talked about on the break. And then Jason couldn't remember the movie he saw that in, and I remembered it. It was Total Recall. And then
you might say he recalled that.
Then Mark started lamenting The Expanse, although there were no eyes bulging out of The Expanse.
You should watch The Expanse.
Yeah.
Because they get it right.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I just thought this was really cool, and I had to include it today because occasionally we talk about science instead of just technology, which is why this is a science and technology podcast. You can see it on the way I categorize this on on Twitch and things. We're science and technology, not just technology or science. So anyway, I thought this was cool. If anybody is not nearly as amazed by the fact that sound is different on Mars as I am, please feel free to let me know. I just think it's amazing. I told my daughters, by the way, my older daughter is very much a science person, science kid. She likes sciencey things. And my younger daughter is not so much. So I'm telling my older daughter, and she's like, wow, that's really cool. And my younger daughter looks at me and goes, why did you say that was amazing when it's not amazing? I'm like, what do you mean it's not amazing? Sound is different on Mars. It's crazy. She didn't get it. She's only 7, though. So, yeah.
Wait till you find out that light has different speeds through different mediums, too.
Well, that I could imagine, right? Because I don't know why this never occurred to me.
but it didn't, and here we are now.
Look, all I want to know is if I'm going to get Wi-Fi signal when I get to Mars, okay?
Right. Well, maybe you won't. Depends what frequency it's at. Maybe it'll be really slow.
Maybe.
All right, and unless you guys have comments on the speed of sound on Mars, we are finally at our last article.
Don't, because I'm tired.
Well, you may have opinions on this one. And this was actually a topic I kind of wanted to touch on during the cyber warfare thing, and we didn't because we went on so many other tangents. But there's a link in this one again because the initial one is behind a paywall. There's also a link on the Wayback Machine, which is not behind a paywall, but of course can get all of this stuff for the sake of history, I suppose. But the original article was from, hang on, let me get down to it, Business Insider. And it's about open source developers are burning out, quitting, and even sabotaging their own projects. And it's putting the entire internet at risk. Now, the thing I wanted to talk about during cyber warfare is there was a recent example of a open source project sabotaging itself in order to attack Russia. Right? I believe the specifics, I forget what the project was, but the specifics were there was code added to the project that if you were in Russian's IP space, it would delete files from your machine. And I get what you're going for, but that's not cool. Like, that's not okay. For the same reasons that the same example that Jason used when Mark was talking about his magic switch that would disable the Russian government. There's going to be collateral damage. You're going to affect Russian citizens. You're going to affect people that are completely unrelated to the war. That's not okay. But that's not exactly what this article is about. This article, there was another news story we talked about a little while ago where a open source developer who was feeling a bit disgruntled and burnt out had intentionally sabotaged his own code, right? And that was colors.js, and there was another project that they were doing, which are mentioned in the article, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But this whole article is a big, long thing about, I almost hesitated to include it because it casts such a negative light on open source projects, right? And of course, Mark and I working where we work, and I'm pretty sure Jason has a similar view that open source software is a good movement. And I also found it very ironic that the only time Red Hat is mentioned in this entire article was one time, and it's this tiny little inconsequential snippet from our CTO, Chris Wright, simply saying that open source software is pervasive. So that it's in use everywhere. And that's true. But there's no other opinions, no other positive light cast from a big company that's based on open source software like Red Hat. And I found that very ironic. Probably intentional.
The article definitely has an agenda, I think.
Yeah.
Because Red Hat, we pay people to work on open source.
Yes, it never talks about that. It paints this light that every open source developer is completely unpaid for, and because of that, they can't be depended on, and they're burning out, and they don't want to do the work that they have to, but they feel like they have to because the internet depends on it, and it's just part of it's BS, but part of it's valid, right? But
I can see that perspective because so you have Red Hat that maintains everything that's in their ecosystem, and that's wonderful. But then you have the core developers of some things like
the other
stuff
thing
like
is
OpenSSL, which is like two guys who don't get paid to do that.
To be clear, right? It's not like Red Hat pays all the kernel developers because we depend on the kernel. We have kernel developers that are paid. We don't pay every kernel developer, right? It's just not the way it works. It can't work that way, right? So it is still valid. There are lots of people that are probably kernel developers that make $0 on being kernel developers. It's good for resume building. It's good for experience. It's good for a passion project, right? Maybe you just love doing it. It may get you a job someday, but it's not guaranteeing you a paycheck. Whereas, working as a developer for Microsoft does.
So, and I found the article about the open source person that bombed their own stuff. It was the Node IPC project, and I put it in the show notes. But open source, I think there's a difference, right? So Red Hat protects its own ecosystem, at least internally to Red Hat, and they may not pay upstream providers for the work that they're doing, but and I don't know the internals of Red Hat, but I suspect that they look at all of the updates that come through for anything that comes out of
That's
the upstream. So
part of that's part of building an enterprise distribution.
Yeah.
And we actually
right.
we do fund several community projects, including Fedora. Like, we
Right.
provide Fedora a lot of resources, and yet we don't drive Fedora. Are there Red Hatters who are on the Fedora project? Yes. Do we hand them marching orders and say, you will make Fedora do this? No, we do not.
Right.
And if people,
Right, but
and people
you-
people need to just believe me that that's the way it is.
Yeah.
right, you fund or you help fund the Fedora project, but and this is not anything against Red Hat or anybody else out there. The Fedora project is made up of literally thousands of other open source projects.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I highly suspect, and I can probably say without a word of lie, Fedora does not fund every one of those 1,000 projects.
No.
No.
So
Absolutely not.
somewhere along the chain, there are open source projects that are, for instance, I can even say this myself. I had a project that I had written that I supported for, in my own way, supported for years. That was a package that was added to Fedora. But I didn't even know about it. But I had somebody who reported like, hey, I'm running this version of it in Fedora, and this is a problem with it, and you should patch this. And I was like, there's a Fedora project, or there's a Fedora package? Like, when the hell did that happen? So I know firsthand that there's not always money that makes it all the way down. Now, my project was not the linchpin of the internet, so who cares? But there are projects out there that, for better or for worse, are linchpins for significant chunks of the infrastructure that's out there. OpenSSL is one that comes to mind because we had that big problem with OpenSSL after Heartbleed, right?
Yeah. And there was
when
like
it
two
came
guys
out,
supporting it, or one guy or something like
Right.
that. Yeah.
When it came out that there were like two guys that were supporting it on the side, because that wasn't their main job.
Yeah.
And don't quote me on this, but I don't think either of them got paid for it at all. Then you have there's lots and lots and lots of projects like that.
Yeah.
So yes, and having been an open, and I don't know if you guys have ever done an open source project, and mine was relatively benign, so it wasn't a huge deal. But I have seen and experienced a little bit where developers get you get the shit kicked out of you by
Yes.
people have
That's
like,
called out
you
in this
must
article.
fix this.
That's called out
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
article. They're like, you're the
You have to-
maintainer. Fix my problem, because and we see this
Right.
at Red Hat too, right? Like,
Yeah.
these are customers that are paying us money, right? So they may feel
Yep.
they have a different sense of entitlement than some dude that's using your
Right.
stuff for free. But it's the same concept, right? You must fix my problem now because this is a big deal for me, right? And when
Right.
you're dealing with an open source project that is completely unfunded, like, that gets exhausting, and that's called out in the article too.
Yeah.
There's an example of a project that I guess they interviewed the people that run it. I'm not sure if I guess they did, because they have quotes in there from them. But they're like, when people are like flat out belligerent that we must fix their problem, I have zero motivation to go fix that problem, right?
Right.
And then, like, that's true of just about anybody, I suppose.
And I've experienced the exact opposite, where I've gone in and said, like, hey, there's a problem with your code. Like, here's all the information I have about it. I'm sorry, I'm not a developer. I don't know how to fix this, but this, how do we get this taken care of?
Yeah.
And the developer is just an absolute ass and just like fires back at you. Like, the source code's there, go fix it your damn self. I'm not touching it. Like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go find a new piece of software to use because you're obviously an idiot.
You're too
Like,
busy.
I'm not going to deal with you.
Yeah.
So it floats both ways sometimes. But yes, some developers take a lot of abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might just hit the guy who would have been nice 999 times.
Yeah.
And you're number 1,000, and he's done with that.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's, hey, the reality of open source is, if the software is that important, and I'm the original creator of it, and I've released it as open source, and it's ruining my life maintaining it, I need to feel perfectly free to walk away.
Right.
Or if a company is demanding that I update it, I could say, look, I don't have the time in my life for this, but if you pay me, I'll do it.
Yep.
Or if you want to throw a
and-
developer at me that'll help fix it, that's fine too, right?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
no
But
one's
but
is someone chaining these developers to this code? Because that's no one's forcing.
mm,
It's
yes
it's
and
that
no.
it's
So
I think it's that people feel obligated, right? And you're
yes.
right, that's a choice. They don't have to feel obligated.
Well,
They
if
can
they're
they can say, "I'm sorry, the project is dead. Goodbye."
they don't
Right?
even have to say
Well,
I'm sorry. No, I don't work on that
but
anymore.
Yeah.
but the I mean, open source has the same problems that life has. You know, there's definitely different responses
Yeah.
if you're female or if you're, black or Asian or, from a different country or, like all of those things still exist there. And then you have, you have other things in there as well. Like a lot of, well, I say a lot. There are definitely several projects that are written and maintained by people who would be considered neurodiverse, who like their entire being exists. This is what they do. This is like central to their to their living and their, like it means a lot to them to be
I'm
able to
sure
work
it
on
does.
this,
It's
and to to be dragged through the mud like destroys them. And
Yeah.
it's not
It's
like
it's
you,
it's
you
like
can't.
it's how
They
they
can't just walk
identify
away.
their worth in life.
Right.
Is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and they can't just walk away, but they can't deal with getting dragged either.
Yeah.
And and there have been instances where, you have a developer who's like, look, I just don't have the time to deal with this. And then, it turns out that whoever happened to be asking them decides to go on an attack and just start dragging them for everything else and giving them a bad name overall, impacting other areas of their life. Like it's stupid internet shit that happens, and they're caught in the middle of it because they wrote something that people liked and used.
Yeah.
And now they're chained to it because people are like, you wrote that, it's your job to fix it, and it doesn't do the thing that I want. I know that it paints sidewalks, but it better go over there and wash my dishes too, damn it. Like, okay, but that's not what this is for. Yeah, well, it is now, or I'm going to drag you through the mud.
and there are ways to deal with people like that.
Not every, I mean, when you're dealing, like, think of developers, like, and this is sort of painting kind of a wide brush, but a lot of developers tend to be like introverted,
Yeah.
kind of,
Hey,
quiet,
I
like
get what you're
dealing
I
with an asshole is not something they do well.
Look, I
I
deal
get
with
what
the
you're saying,
people.
Jason,
The engineers can't deal with people. I deal with the
You can-
people.
you can always block. You can always block people's emails. You can always kick them from sites that you have admin on.
Yeah.
Like I get it, and yeah, I do feel bad when people are hassled, and you know, if you're gonna go for internet glory, and part of what you've decided identifies you turns into a popular piece of code that people have learned to rely on, and you're okay, and you're in a place where you're not getting compensated for it, or whatever, that just it comes with the territory, because that's how people are. And I don't know
Yeah,
what to
I mean,
say.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of cases where it's simply not like you just there's no blame here on the developer. The developer's like, I needed a thing, I wrote a thing, other people liked it. Okay,
Yeah.
like that's not my problem. I think my main thing is like people need to. Well, first of all, if you're not a developer and you're not going to contribute, like back off. Like just like you keep bullying people, whether it's for open source software or because they didn't give you the right amount of sugar that you wanted it at, like simply put, fuck off and grow up. Like the
So
world is not here to serve you, right? Like,
wow,
come on.
we are so late right now, but like
We are.
I had a huge foray into open source because I wrote the Land of Nordock. It was an Everwinter Nights module, and I had a public release version of it. I was also the name and face of Rick Term's Retreat, which was the officially hosted version. There were times that I would make changes to it, the official version, where people would squawk and complain. I'm like, holy shit, now I know how the people at Veront feel, the guys who ran EverQuest.
Right.
And I would occasionally have people email me about the public release, and most people were very gracious, and they would ask questions, or hey, can you give me advice? And so if they had a request, and I'm like, look, I don't maintain the public release. I dumped it as the code base. I can tell you why. I can try and remember why I did something a certain way, but I'm not going to update it. There's not going to be multiple versions of it. You're free to do with it what you want, but I don't own the maintenance of it. Some people did not like that. Those people, the first time they were a jackass to me, I stopped replying to their emails and ultimately started filtering them.
Yeah.
I don't need that. And if I get that, and where my feelings occasionally hurt for a couple of seconds, but I realized the opinion of this person is irrelevant to me. Doesn't matter. I'm blocking him. I'm not dealing with him. And people who are going to work, out in the open on open source projects, I think they should understand, and those of us who are part of these communities and who can act in a mentoring role need to kind of help and say, look, you might catch flack sometimes. Things might get personal. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or a bad developer. It means that it honestly reflects more poorly on the guy giving you grief, because they don't know how to express themselves in a constructive manner, and they're frustrated. But no open source developer who is not being paid specifically to work on a project owes anyone else a damn thing.
Yep, completely agree.
They release their code. The guy who pissed you off by saying, here's the source code, fix it yourself, I actually agree with him. I don't feel like fixing it. Maybe when I'm in a better mood I will, but there's the source code.
Yeah. It was like that's fine. Like he can choose to say no. It was more of like I was, like, hey, I need help trying to figure out how to do this,
right.
sort of thing. And he's not obligated to do that. But my point was like he chose not to, and my answer was like, I got to move on. Like I got to do something else.
And that's fine. And for all we know, he had gotten into a huge fight with his wife. He wasn't getting laid, whatever.
Yeah, right. Had a really bad day. And
right?
you just got the brunt of it. Yeah.
Could he have been more gracious? Yes. But again, for all we know, you were the 10th person in a row who you were the straw.
Yep.
And it sucks. It sucks you were the straw. But again, and these companies that rely on this open source software and refuse to contribute back and refuse to take some sort of ownership of it inside of their own systems, they're the ones who are going to be in trouble when the stuff breaks.
Yep. So I would 100% agree that an open source person who is not being paid owes nothing to nobody.
Yeah.
I would also say that anybody who is being paid to do open source, the only people they owe are the people paying them proportionally.
Damn straight.
And if you're not paying them, again, that's your problem.
Yeah.
You don't get a vote. You can give your opinion, but you don't get a vote. You have no
Right.
power.
Right. Exactly. And unfortunately, like I think, we are in like the infrastructure as a whole.
4-hour show today.
Yeah, we are.
the infrastructure as a whole has a huge problem where we have an awful lot of open source software that we desperately rely on, and there's that awesome XKCD comic that has a little one at the bottom.
Out. Yeah,
some
piece
that
of
little
code
tiny
that's
piece at the bottom that's holding everything up, and it's one guy who's been missed by the bus twice and is sitting in the hospital, like that maintains everything.
Yeah,
and it like we got to identify that stuff and start like paying those people. They're holding up an awful lot,
or at least giving them help,
or be willing to take the project and roll it in and say, look, we will shepherd this project now because it's that important.
Right. Yeah. So like we're talking about OpenSSL a lot because it was a great example, and I do wonder now if whether it was Red Hat or Canonical or somebody that is a big open source behemoth, right? Did somebody swoop in and start helping out that project? Right now, I'm kind of curious.
I don't know.
I remember there was somebody who had started helping. I don't know if they still are, but there was something.
A few years ago, it was popular to lament that one guy on the planet understood NPT.
Yeah.
But now we have Crony. And part of the reason we have Crony is because people realized that NTP, as it was going, was unsustainable.
Yep.
So things did adjust, right?
Yeah. But we still use OpenSSL, so something must have changed.
You still you still need to be a physicist to understand how NTP works, though. So, Crony makes it easy to deploy, but you still need the physics to understand it.
Right.
Well, how to tell what the fuck time it is a surprisingly complicated question.
It really is.
Oh, it very much is.
It's actually not easy at all.
Date and time math sucks. That's all there is to it.
What time is it?
It is quarter after
know.
10 in the Eastern time zone, depending on whether you observe daylight savings time or not. Further highlighting the complexities of time and open source projects. And I think we're going to have to close it up because, yes, this half of the show, at least, this half of the show is at least 2 hours, and the first half was over an hour. It's going to be a long one, guys. It's going to be fun to edit. It might not happen till tomorrow because I'm tired.
That looks like a clock, right? I don't have a traumatic brain injury.
It's not a very good circle, but it does look like a clock.
Okay. That was on the Good Doctor today. He asked her to draw a clock, and she
What was
drew
the-
half of it.
What was
Like,
the-
there's some-
oh, that was
Jason's broken on something here.
the Hannibal Lecter show. What was it? The Dragon one. There was a series, and that the clock came up quite a lot in that one.
Hannibal, the one with Mads Mikkelsen. Oh, so good. Oh.
Yeah. Was it Hannibal?
He's so much better than the guy who played him in Silence of the Lambs. Honestly, it's such a better. That show was so good, and my daughter and I would watch it.
It was
feel
good.
guilty, like that food looks delicious, but is it people or is it actually what it's supposed to be? But it looks so good.
Soylent Green.
All right, so while these guys go on about TV shows and eating people, my automation has reminded me that it's time to go to bed. You can see the lights dimming out. That generally means that we should probably close the show up in my nice dark office.
Creepy doll is about to attack you.
Creepy doll will attack me at any moment. Right. So, folks, thank you for sticking around. If you're here this long, you're a dedicated listener, and thank you for being a dedicated listener. Or, I mean, God love you if you stuck around on the stream tonight, because we've been going on for quite a while, including a drop in the middle. I mean, that didn't happen. There was no drop in the middle. That's totally that's just me misremembering something because it's so late at night and I can't draw clocks.
There are American tanks in Baghdad.
If you do want to watch this thing live, you can do so on roughly the second and fourth Thursday of roughly every month. We usually stick to that, seriously. Although we never know how long the show's going to go. You can find us on YouTube.
Today was extra long because it was last time.
It was. You can find us on YouTube or Twitch. Just look for the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. In fact, it's either of those URLs / Iron Sysadmin Podcast, all spelled out, no spaces, to get right to our stuff. You can find our Discord community if you'd like to join it. Discord! On the website, because the link to join is not something I can recite because it's got all kinds of random letters and stuff in it. In numbers, too. So, we're covering it. Yeah, exactly. We're trying to keep the Russians out. You can find us on the social medias, Twitter and Facebook. Look for the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. You can support us on Patreon, and we love you for doing so. Patreon.com/Iron Sysadmin, or go buy a shirt if you want to buy a shirt. I haven't moved them yet. I may someday. I probably won't. You guys have any final words while I find the goodbye page here?
Purple.
Good night tonight.
Purple.
Had fun.
Purple is the word that Jason has chosen.
Support your local open source developer.
Yeah, and honestly, we talked a lot about cyber warfare. The reason we talked about cyber warfare is because there is currently, whether you want to call it a military operation or a war going on that is heavily impacting the Ukrainian people. If you are able to help them in any way, whether it's financially or, I don't know, like Mark was talking, grab your 22 and an American flag and go over to the Ukraine and be the front line. Maybe don't do that. But if you can help them out in any way.
Maybe look into the legality of that first.
There was a humble...
Do that, I was asking.
There was a humble bundle. Jason, I know you're usually up on those. There was a humble bundle that was benefiting Ukraine. If you can find the link and throw it into the show notes, that would be awesome. If it's still on. I don't know if it is.
Bundle is good for the next 15 hours.
Okay, so you may not be able to get in on it before the show posts, but if you're watching the live stream,
Yeah.
I'll put it in the notes. You'll be able to see it in the YouTube stuff when I update it. Otherwise, just go to Humble Bundle. I'm sure it's on their site, right?
Yeah,
better
it
be.
is, and it's huge. It's like $3,000 worth of stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
yeah.
really cool stuff.
Somebody
there.
mentioned it
It's
to
worth every
me
penny.
on a call last week, and I meant to share it and never did, and so this is it. Right, we're gonna end the show now, guys. It's late. Mark's falling asleep. I can see his eyes getting light there. He's like,
You're getting sleepy. And I have a stupid meeting tomorrow at 8:15.
I'm so sorry about that.
Stupid meeting.
You're the stupid one that decided to be a stupid manager. So.
Truth.
All right,
Truth.
folks. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, listening, viewing, liking, subscribing, all the cool things. I'm gonna stop rambling and we're gonna end the show. Good night, folks.